Okay.
You know what I mean? But this one was by far the most isolated, because I wasn't gonna like bring like Love Supreme back to the fucking jam space while we're like in the middle of like. It's like, hold on. All right. I'm not fucking weak. Oh, I'm not. It's like, hold on. Like, Love Supreme. What, you know what I mean? Like, I don't.
On the one, I can't decide if Love Supreme, of the things on this playlist, if that song would be the best or the worst choice because of that vocal towards the end where he's just going, Love Supreme, Love Supreme.
Hey,
Love
dude.
Supreme,
That,
Love
you
Supreme,
can't. That. You better. I will fight over.
Put some respect on his name.
I will fight over all things having to do with that record. Episode 18, recorded January 14th, 2022. So you were asking me about something.
Oh shit. So you've got that Roland. What is it exactly?
Vs1680.
And it's like a digital.
Yeah, it's from the early 2000s, and it's sort of like a whole. It's like
an all-in-one recording station.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So 16 tracks It might not be 16 tracks simultaneous recording, but maybe 16 tracks mixing. Yes, that's it.
That seems right.
Yeah. It was 8 tracks simultaneous recording.
And it's been sitting in the corner of your garage for who knows how long now, and
yeah, because I said I was set up the camera, and I was like, "What did we do before touch screens?" And you said, "Enjoy the tactile," and I was like, "We used fucking data wheels." Is what we did.
Yep, that thing, iPods, old iPods.
Oh yeah,
the old jog wheel.
I never had one of those, but yeah, like the data wheel on that fucking. So that's what we recorded the All Severed record on, the second one. Or I guess the last one. And so I can't throw it away. I can't. It's too, because I spent so much time with my hands on that fucking thing, and the learning curve on it was so stupid high just to be able to. I still have a piece of paper somewhere where I did all the cuts. Because, So I don't know if you remember this, when we tracked the drums, so the way we recorded that is me and Jeremy sat there, and he went in through like a pod, like a line 6.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
As like a DI, right? And so he sat there with headphones on and played beside me while I tracked the drums. But there's a lot of space and a lot of pauses and stuff like that. We weren't using a click track, so I like clicked my sticks together.
Right.
Okay. With not the most consistent tempo. But then when it got time to mix, it was like, oh my God, what the fuck are we going to do about all these stick clicks in here? And what I figured out was that if you leave the first little bit of the stick click in there, right? So when you cut the wave, you leave just that little bit. It gives an anchor to it, like to your ear, and so it doesn't stand out. It sounds like an effect. It sounds like a, like a right? But if it doesn't have that little
only of the first click.
Right. Only on the first click. But if you take it off before that, it's just a hard and it stands out in your ears. Because I would like hit cymbals to like, bucket tuka gah.
Right.
And then I would start click, click, click to hold all this space.
But any of that ambient noise that was already going, it gets cut off abruptly.
Right. So the cymbals overhang and stuff like that. But it if you stop it on that downbeat and leave a little bit of the click in there, it creates this little audio illusion.
That's cool. Yeah.
But now, with having a visual interface, that would be very easy to. I see the wave. I see right where it's at. I could click, 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 highlight, delete, done. Moving on. I was not able to do that because you didn't have a mouse. You had a data wheel.
Right.
And so I had to write down all of the times and then use the data wheel to like, okay, I'm going to cut from here.
And there wasn't like an external. You couldn't like plug up a monitor to that,
No,
right?
not to
there was
that
a little
one.
LCD on the thing, right?
Yep. Yeah, you couldn't plug up a monitor to that one. The next model later you could.
Right.
And so yeah, it was just bullshit.
So it's sentimentality that's making you hold on to it.
Oh yeah, it's not like I'm gonna fire the thing up. The thing stopped working a long time ago.
And to be clear, for any long-time followers of events like this is a different one than the cat piss one.
Yeah, the cat. So
These
yeah,
are two different.
Yeah, so we recorded. All Severed recorded Euphemism, or later retitled Carry Me Home, in 2005 on this particular Roland Vs1680. And then a few years later, Buff Wayne would record, what did we call that?
Bigger than most things.
Bigger than most things.
I was just looking at that CD the other day.
I was talking about it earlier today.
I'm still really proud of the packaging and the art that we did on that.
I still feel bad for sort of like dumping this on you. Like, computers, figure all of this out.
It was a good learning experience. I never got to use those skills again, really, but here we are.
Yeah, now that I've done more packaging for CDs and things like that, now I understand how much work was involved in that I just like sort of, hey Robert, this is what it should be.
Well, so the layout and everything was the easy part. The tough part was like, because I drew the CD art.
Mm-hmm.
I just like hand drew it, and that was fun. No, I didn't hand draw it. I did it in Paint. I
the teeth.
Yeah.
It looks so good.
I think it looks fucking cool.
It does.
I really think it looks cool.
It does.
I'm actually proud of it. But yeah, that was like a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, I do remember that was whenever there was tension between us, between you and Josh, and so Josh didn't want to kind of finish his end of the deal.
Oh, is that what happened?
And like kind of finish giving us the artwork.
I didn't remember that.
So I had to kind of go and like strong arm him a little bit. Not strong arm him, just I had to keep bugging him and being, about it.
Yeah.
But he was really helpful with the All Severed art later on, when we
the re-releases.
Yeah, the re-releases.
Right.
But shit. Yeah. So so we recorded that on a Roland, I think it's called a 2680 or something like that. It was just like the bigger version of that and whatnot. And that one you could hook a monitor up to and have a mouse and shit like that.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
But that recording almost got stopped because a cat pissed in it. And so then we had to like
all over it.
Yeah, like ruin the board inside, and so we had to pull it out.
Replace the hard drive.
You pulled the hard drive out and somehow figured out how to extract the data, and we finished it on Pro Tools.
Right.
So some fucking like half a year later.
Yep.
Some bullshit like that. So
yeah. Man.
Yeah, that one was still sitting in my mother's garage when they demoed it a few months ago.
Yeah,
because they were like, "What's up with this?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, that does not work."
You don't want to fuck with that thing. You'll catch it.
I remember taking that to like the Roland specialist here in town.
Yeah,
Evans Music City, and I was like, "Yeah, and he was gone for like 3 minutes. He came back, he's like, "Dude, the cat hosed this thing. It's done." I was like, "Gah!" And I was so mad at the person whose house it was because, she was like, "Oh, well, cats don't do that. This cat wouldn't do that." Like, it was just a complete, like...
Just complete dismissal of the
very
idea.
Right, yeah. Like, what do you mean a cat would pee on something that was foreign to its environment? You know what I mean? Like, it was just... Anyway. I was pretty irritated about the whole thing. But yeah, anyway, yeah, like touchscreens are awesome.
I go back and forth because there are some things that I really, really like them for.
Maybe what I mean is that Roland 1680 sucked.
I can get behind that.
That's maybe what I really mean.
100% behind that one. Yep.
Yeah. So.
I spent the better part of today, while I was ostensibly working, reading the fallout from a famous voice actor having announced his partnership with an NFT service.
Okay.
And this is like a famous gaming voice actor.
Okay.
You played BioShock Infinite.
I did.
The dude who voiced Booker DeWitt.
Oh, okay.
That guy. He voices a billion characters in a billion games. And today he was like on Twitter, starting up a partnership with this NFT company, who's like they're you know, he didn't say this, but like you go look at their Twitter account, it's like 2 months old, and they're spouting just like the most inane bullshit. And I was like, what are you doing? But anyway, afterwards he was like, you just want to, you know, everybody's got a story to tell and just want to tell their story. I just want to tell a story. And he was like, you can hate or you can create. What's it gonna be? And then everyone, like the entirety of Twitter who isn't NFT bros, just fucking dogpiled on him, and it was it was a thing for most of the day until he came back and he was like, hey man, I just want to be part of the conversation, man. I just want to, you know, just trying to get my voice out there again. I want people to have their voices out there. And it's like, man, look before you leap sometimes.
So what do you think's up with that?
What do I think's up with that?
Yeah.
Like, why did he do it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. He seems like he's probably kind of a opportunistic dude, which
Okay.
fair. I mean, if you're a voice actor for anything,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be pretty opportunistic. You kind of need to be to survive, because that shit's like not a sustainable line of work. It's the gig economy more or less, unless you're super super big like he is, which makes it kind of weirder that he would jump on that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
But also people just don't know what NFTs are.
Mm-hmm.
And when a company comes to you and says, you know, your work, your voice can be commodified in such a way that, you know, all
I get it.
the shit that NFT people say, that crypto bros say about this shit.
Yeah, I get it now.
You can be sucked into it or suckered into it, as it were.
Right.
If you don't really know what it is that's going on.
So you think that they sort of, the company just was like, oh yeah, let's get Booker DeWitt.
I think it was I think it was a mixture of them going out after big names probably, and then him not really understanding fully what it was that he was getting into, and also him just wanting to make more money. Probably. It seems likely.
Sure, yeah. Which, I mean, you know, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with, you know.
If you can get yours, then get yours. Like, but if it's going to be at the expense of, if it's going to be via NFTs, maybe don't get yours.
Yeah, because that's I don't understand enough about NFTs to sort of speak intelligently about it. But my understanding of it is that is basically like kind of a scheme.
It's a pyramid. It's a pyramid scheme. It's like literally a pyramid scheme.
Like people are like, you have a business partnership with someone, and then you buy, like someone buys the NFT back and forth to sort of push the value up until some sucker basically buys it.
I mean, that's what's been going on for a couple months now. Is that whatever the stat is now is something to the effect of. Because you can look at the dollar amount. Like, there are this many dollars worth of NFTs out there owned by people. And then this huge percentage of that is owned by... It's like the economic disparity of the country, you know?
Sure.
The vast majority of the wealth is owned by a small percentage.
I see.
It's the exact same thing.
I see.
And the people who have driven those prices up are the people who want it to go up because it'll sell for more.
Right.
It's all speculative nonsense.
Like, oh man, how wonderful. You've like made what we already have, but kind of worse.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Artificial scarcity? I'm all about that. I can make money off that. That's all that it is. Because if you don't know what a Ponzi scheme is, you know, that's what this is. It's convincing people to spend money on something. Because what's the classic, like the diet pill Ponzi scheme, or like selling knives door to door, whatever the fuck it is.
Okay.
Like you give somebody a thing and say, all right, you pay me. How does it go? I'll give you the stuff to go sell, and how you make money is you sell it,
Right.
and you'll get money. But what you actually need to do is get more people to sell it.
Right.
And so, right, it just goes down the chain. So you make this NFT that's not worth anything because they're intrinsically worthless. You know, and you say, here, you buy this, and it'll jack up the price because you'll sell it to some other sucker.
Yeah.
And that's all that it is. It's just an endless chain of that. And the people who started it, they made money at some point, and that was the whole goal.
Yeah.
It's not about protecting art or intellectual property or
right. And I think that's how a lot of it is pitched. Is like, oh well, and maybe there are a few artists out there that are able to make money with it. Or
there absolutely were, especially at the very beginning when a couple of people like, here's an art NFT of one of my pieces. Oh, it sold for a few $100,000. Sick. I would never would have made that otherwise.
Right.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
That they got paid, but like.
But it's not like only the people who are creating pieces of art are the ones who are selling NFTs.
No, absolutely not.
So.
And not only that, but they're like horrendously expensive in terms of resources. Like they take so much more electricity than you could imagine to run.
Right.
Depending on the type of blockchain it's on.
Because
there's different. If you don't know, well, that's a lot to get into right now. But there's proof of work, and then there's proof of stake. And proof of work requires calculations to be run to add to the blockchain that exponentially grows over time, and it will never level off. It will never go down. It will only ever get greater. And so as, you know, it's only going to become more of a problem.
And what's proof of state?
Stake.
Stake. What's proof of stake?
I don't remember how they differ computationally, but I know that they require far less. They're less resource intensive.
Yeah.
But they're checking for different things is basically what it is.
Right. I think again, I don't understand stuff very well, but someone I know who has been into Bitcoin for a long time, like sort of brought that up as a counter argument to the electricity concerns of, and I cannot replicate this argument.
Right.
But it seemed to be that like Bitcoin has been in a proof of work state and then it will soon shift to a proof of stake, and that will take less it sounded like he was saying that there's going to come a point to where the computational load is going to level off or something
if enough of the different blockchain, because there are different blockchains out there, is kind of what it is. And they're like, you can get Ethereum or you can get blah blah blah,
right,
Dogecoin, or you know, all these different things, or maybe some of those are on the same, but I don't know enough about that specifically to know for sure. But it kind of doesn't matter, because as long as proof of work is the way that you're checking for it, it takes a lot of resources.
I see.
And so you see a lot of companies like the one that Homeboy hooked up with today and then retracted, saying shit like, well, right now we do take a lot of resources, but in the future our plan is to roll over to a less resource intensive way of doing things. And that's kind of what like most of them end up saying. And it's like, do you? I don't.
Yeah.
Are you trying to make money this week? And that's it.
Right. And it would be a thing if there was only, again, like a lot of my information or awareness from this recently comes from a few episodes of the show Behind the Bastards with Robert Evans talking about it. Great show. Check it out. Everything Robert Evans does is cool and legit and well-sourced and all that shit. But it seems like a big part of the blockchain, cryptocurrency stuff or whatever is that there's, on one level, it seems like a lot of idealists, you know, and like the philosophical ideology behind it seems very admirable. and whatnot. But
Seems.
that's not the people who have a lot of Bitcoin necessarily, and those are not the people who are making a lot of money off of Bitcoin or NFTs or cryptocurrency or whatever. A lot of the people who are making money off of it are, kind of shady people.
It's a grift. It's a big old grift is what it is right now.
Sure.
It's an expensive, both in terms of like getting into it and in terms of the resources that it takes.
Right.
Grift is all that it is at the moment. Whether or not that improves over time, that'd be cool if it did, because there's probably some pretty decent applications for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable talking shit about it because I don't really understand it. But I can say that I've read a bit about it. Like I read Satoshi's white paper. I read a book of all of the posts that he made, and I wasn't sold on the concept from all that.
Yeah, it's the things that people are trying to apply it. Things that people are trying to, the applications people are trying to use it for.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is how to say that. Are not really what its strong suit is.
Yeah.
Like putting artwork on the blockchain doesn't do anything for you. Because what you're doing is, from what I understand how most of them work, and kind of the only way they really can work, is the thing that you put on the blockchain actually is just a link to where the artwork lives online. Whether that's on like somebody's private server or like an Imager post, right? It has to point to somewhere because the artwork has to live somewhere. Quote unquote live, as much as a digital piece of artwork can.
Sure.
Or any digital file at all. So all that's on the blockchain is a link to somewhere else. And that is what you own. That's the proof that you own, right?
Right.
And that can change.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what you own is the receipt. You don't own the artwork.
Right. I think I understand what you're saying.
Right.
And yeah, like
now if you build something onto the blockchain, if you somehow built the art as part of the thing that you add to the chain, then that's a different story, but that's not what's being done.
Yeah.
So everyone in like Twitter comments who just says, well, I just right click saved your fucking NFT. What are you going to do about it? Are totally correct. Because there's nothing of value being done there right now.
Right. And I guess like maybe there's like some sort of argument to be made about, well, maybe they know that that's like that, maybe they're aware of that or whatever, and that's like beside the point. But
they're definitely aware of it, because that's why it's a grift.
I guess like yeah, like I guess like I mean the people buying it or selling or whatever, but
no, they're in on it too for the most part, I think. But the people who want it to be a thing, like an idealistic way about going about things,
yeah,
that's the part that's a shame, because I think people do think that it is like, we're going to decentralize ownership for this sort of thing.
Right.
And that's cool in theory, but that's just not how it works right now.
Right. It might, and it's a, I don't know. I almost wonder if there's some sort of latent concept in this about just, I don't know. I'd really like to pick my friend's brain about it and see how he feels about it now. Because a few years ago, he was very much sort of a blockchain evangelist or a Bitcoin evangelist, and in a sense, that might be too strong of a term, but he's very, very much into it for the, the social and societal change with which it could help manifest.
Sure.
This idea of decentralized banking and whatnot. Yeah. And he was very attached to that idea. And I wonder if he's drifted from that in any regard, or if he's, or if there's sort of like this latent concept of does anything become shitty when enough people are doing it? Like, is that, it's like, or is like, is blockchain Bitcoin inherently shitty, or is the internet inherently shitty, or
Yes, the answer is yes.
or did the internet just get shitty whenever there was very little barrier to entry, and whenever,
That's a whole other conversation, but
yeah, my answer would be like, no, the internet, no, shitty people have always been using the internet, because like the KKK was on the internet in the 80s, and shit like that. So
no, I mean the answer to most of that probably is like a collection of like an amalgamation of those are yes.
sure, yeah.
Like they feed off of one another.
What do you mean? There's not like just a simple answer for we just get to have yes or no. We can't just have all X is a bad and all Y is a good. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yes, no, and that's
Conversation over.
Simple as that. Yes.
There's this. I think the artist is named Josh Turner. I'll look it up to make sure. But there's a song he has called something like 1939, I think is the name of the song. But there's a line in there that says like simple answers are for fascists and maybe teenagers. It's just It's just a really great lyric. It's a
That's a good succinct way to boil down an otherwise difficult topic, ironically.
yeah, right. Let me I just don't want to do this guy wrong, because
we went to school with Josh Turner, I think.
we did.
Now that I think
Frank
about it.
Frank Turner, the song. Yeah, we did go to school with a Josh Turner. He and I hung out and talked about Kiss a lot. Oddly enough, we like traded Kiss VHSs back
Really?
and forth. Yeah, man.
Am I thinking of somebody else?
No, you're not.
Okay, because I wouldn't picture that dude being
No,
a Kiss.
it's that dude, because I was surprised too. Like we were in the locker room because he played football.
Yeah.
And I played football also. I wasn't.
You were in there to trade Kiss tapes while he was
yeah.
taking his pads off.
And I don't know. It's like, hey, Wooten, so you play the drums? Yeah, man.
Think about Peter Criss, man.
I played drums. He's like, well, what do you think about Kiss? I was like, I fucking like Kiss. He's like, dude, Kiss is my favorite fucking band.
No, hold on. No one has ever said that.
And then he like brought in like the next day, he was like, here, man,
Are we talking like Detroit Rock City, or are we talking like Psycho Circus? Like, what are we talking about here?
Dude,
Or he ran the gamut?
I'll go to bat for Psycho Circus.
Okay. Honestly, I kind of like that song.
We're in the sun.
Do. Yeah.
Dude, there's a few bangers on
right.
that fucking album, man.
Okay.
I
don't like Kiss. I don't fucking like Kiss.
I
never
do.
liked Kiss.
I do.
Okay.
I'm not like a Kiss army. Like, I don't love
Yeah.
Kiss. I'm not, you know what I mean? But I like them. I definitely fucking like them.
I'll fuck with some Kiss.
I certainly will.
Okay.
There's something
Nothing against that.
I really, really like Paul Stanley as a person, and as a performer and whatnot. And I respect Gene Simmons, because Gene Simmons has always been very transparent about what he is.
That's very true. If you're gonna go after it and be a shithead while doing it, and go after it at the risk of being the biggest shithead,
well,
there you go.
His shitheadedness never really bothered me, because it's like he's not really, because he never really seemed like he was shitty to people. Like he just sort of like put on this persona for interviews. But I don't feel like I heard, I never really heard him talking a lot of shit about other musicians, and like Kiss, Kiss brought Van Halen out on their first tour. Kiss, I don't know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know, man. Like
No, that's fair. I mean, like,
I don't have the receipts.
So to
back it up,
if the persona that he puts out there is just of a shithead, then he did good job. He did his job.
Yeah, I mean, he's just
getting me to think that he's a shithead.
He's just sort of always been like an unapologetic capitalist, I guess.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know. So he's like this. The thing that's great about him is that he is what he is, and he's not pretending to be anything else. And I would rather. This is a bad example, but I don't feel good about this example, but I'm going to use it anyway because I think people will understand it. I would rather have a big charismatic rock star type act like Gene Simmons than act like Bono. But I love U2. I love U2 more than I like Kiss. I celebrate most of their catalog. I love that band. I truly love that band.
Some real push and pull going on there.
But almost not even like Bono himself, but the archetype that people think of when they think of like, you know, like this kind of like abstract, aloof, think of the children, rock star, blah blah blah. I'm here to serve. I'm here to da 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 da. Whether or not that's actually Bono or not doesn't matter. But that there's a certain archetype that people attach to him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I prefer the Gene Simmons archetype of like, of course I'm here to make money. Of course I'm here to sleep with beautiful women and make money. There's something like, you know,
almost comforting.
I guess.
Like you know what he's about.
Yeah, and I feel like I have to tip my hat to him because there's no one else who's ever been able to sort of, that I know of, that's ever been able to like be that sort of like, have a persona that's that upfront about all that and not come off as just fucking gross.
I would argue that he does come off as fucking gross.
Fair enough.
I mean, also that was just the character. You ever see Runaway with Tom Selleck?
No.
In the 80s, Gene Simmons plays the villain in that movie.
Oh, wonderful!
It's all about Tom Selleck and these little like spider robots that do some weird, and like they inject shit into your neck. It's pretty fucked up.
Okay.
But Gene Simmons is like the mastermind villain of that movie, and he plays himself, as far as I can tell. Just a complete like corporate shitbag.
Oh, that's great.
It's a great movie. Also.
That's great. Yeah, I don't shit on. I don't.
Anyway, Kiss.
Yeah, I don't give them a lot of. Well, there's a lot of people that like want to talk shit about him or whatever, but you have Kiss condoms and Kiss literally. It's like, dude,
Kiss coffins,
and it's like, dude, people buy that shit.
Yeah.
You can't get mad at them because people buy that shit.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
And like, and this is the other thing too, is it's like, if you're gonna be a millionaire, you know, and you're gonna make a lot of fucking money, having to fucking go out on the road and play shows is a way more honest way to have, like, you're still fucking working. Yeah. So you're still having to go do a thing.
And also, let me be clear, I'm not mad at Kiss. I'm not mad at them for their commodification of everything that they do. Like,
sure,
that is what it is.
Some people are like, you know.
I just don't like their music very much for the most part.
You got to find it's all over the place. You got to find a lane. You know, you kind of got to like listen to a lot of it to figure out like, oh, these are the 10 Kiss songs that I really like.
Yeah. Like there's Detroit Rock City, and then there's Psycho Circus, and that's kind of all I can think of at the top of my head.
There you go, man.
And that's enough for me, honestly.
Yeah.
But I was trying to find this video of someone isolated audio of Ace Frehley from one of their tours, and he's just yelling the most like random nonsense, and it's him just going, "All right, okay, come on, Boston, Seattle, let me hear some reggae," or whatever the fuck, you know.
Is it Ace Frehley or Paul Stanley?
I think it's Ace Frehley.
Okay, well, Paul Stanley's the singer,
right?
Okay,
I think it's Ace Frehley though.
All right,
maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
maybe it's Paul Stanley. I don't know. Maybe that's why I couldn't find the fucking video.
There you go.
Okay.
And I must confess to another reason that I feel the urge. I'll be completely transparent here, but I feel the urge to go to bat for Gene and Paul at the moment is they've been very consistent during all of the COVID stuff, and they've been very consistently like sort of fuck that Donald Trump shit. Fuck, it's like. Wear masks. Do what you're fucking supposed to do, you selfish assholes.
All right.
And
I can get behind that.
And I really, really respect that because I know that about half of the people I've met that are serious Kiss fans would not vibe with that message.
Sure.
And so I respect having the fucking balls to say what you think about an issue without sort of like, well, I don't want to, blah, 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 blah. Because as much as I like respect Metallica, for instance, like they are very, very intentionally
It's like not engaging with any of that.
apolitical. They are very, very, very intentionally apolitical, and they will not take an official stance on absolutely anything. And I know that's a calculated move on their part. As much as I love them, as much as I respect them, as much as, I have a lot of positive emotions and energy to throw at Metallica.
Yeah.
That's the thing I kind of don't like. I would have,
that kind of checks out, I feel like, though. That's not
Oh.
very surprising if that's the case.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, so this artist, Frank Turner, there's a song called 1933. It's a great song. Go listen to it. He's basically just talking about sort of the rise of modern fascism, and the lyrics are great. The first time it's a tragedy, the second time it's a farce. I think that's a reference to. I mean, there's a book by Slavoj Zizek, however you say that guy's name.
I don't know. I've heard that quote, though.
But the very popular, the only popular leftist philosopher that exists, the guy with the beard, the weird dude.
Okay.
Slavoj Zizek or Zizek.
Okay.
He did the debate with Jordan Peterson.
Oh, current day, you're saying?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know who this is.
You probably do. But anyway, he wrote a book called The First Time is a Tragedy, The Second is a Farce. But
Well, if you'll remember, back in, it was like 2003 or 4, one George H.W. Bush. Which one's the old one? H.W. is the old one.
Mhm.
George W. Bush
This guy.
had a... Okay. I've seen this dude and his name before. But
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Polish, I assume?
Yeah.
Looks Polish.
Yeah.
George W. Bush said, fool me once, shame on on you. Fool me twice. It won't get fooled again. So
Shame on you again. Is that what it was?
well, no, it was it won't get fooled again.
Did he say that?
That was his fucking
Oh,
quote.
God damn it.
It was like, fool me once, and shame on you. Fool me twice. Yeah, you don't get fooled again. Or something, something rambly like that. It was basically that.
Don't always believe what you hear and see. Unless you see it for yourself. Amen, brother.
Oh,
One
man.
in the late great Vinnie Paul
Oh, boy.
shared his wisdom.
What wisdom.
Um,
What wisdom that was.
but yeah, so this Frank Turner song, 1933. First time is a tragedy, second time is a farce. Outside, it's 1933, so I'm hitting the bar. So he's talking about like rise of modern fascism and shit like that. But this is the line. Oh, it's such a great line. Be suspicious of simple answers. That shit's for fascists and maybe teenagers.
Man. Yeah, I want to hear this. I want to hear this in context of the song now. I'll go look that up.
It's a great song.
Right.
It's a great song. But yeah, so yeah, simple answers. So you mean there's just not a yes no to is Bitcoin a good or a bad?
Yeah, it
Is
turns out.
blockchain a good or a bad?
Turns out, it depends on the application. Turns out the answer is it fucking depends. Like every other answer to everything important.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's the boring one, but that's also the objectively true one.
God damn you, contextual knowledge.
Like, boy.
So,
Well, within my context, I don't want to think outside of it. So I'm talking about in terms of my context.
what other one matters? So
Yeah, exactly. So,
well,
yeah.
that might be as good of a segue as any of contextual knowledge.
yeah.
To talk about what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about my early exposure to jazz music.
Jazz.
Yeah, jazz.
Hey, Mac Daddy.
So I made a playlist for Robert. And so the main thing on this, the context of this, is that I when I was in college, so my second semester of college, I got asked to join this sort of modern rock sort of jam band kind of thing, and they asked me to join as a percussionist.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, cool. Let me rearrange my college schedule and take a few less classes. And I was like, oh, well, I need a few more hours, so I'm still full-time. Well, I'll take drum lessons. I already know how to play the drums.
I'll take drum lessons.
I need an easy credit. But, maybe it'll be good, sort of, give me some good ideas on how to teach other people on how to play the drums. 'Cause
You can see what they do and then ape their style, but make it better.
yeah, so, I mean, because I already know how to do this.
You're basically professional.
I'm 18, and I have taught myself since I was 12.
Teenagers, huh?
You're never better. So I went in for the first day of drum lessons with at Lee College, and the drum instructor from U of H, Joel Fulgham, was adjuncting there. He would come out there on Fridays and teach drum lessons. So total crazy stroke of fortune, right? So I have probably the best at the time, probably one of the best drum instructors in the fucking city.
Word.
And he's like, okay, so I hear you already do gigs and stuff like that, and so you already kind of know what you're doing. So, all right, so let's get started. So play me a rock beat. And at this moment, I realize that I am so full of shit that
Awesome.
that I am amazed. It was like my true self was like kind of surfaced. It was like, what the fuck have you gotten us into? We don't know how to do any of this. And so I play a rock beat, and I'm like, boom, bop, boom, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, da, da, tss, right?
Playing We Will Rock You.
Some shit like that. And so this is 2002. Okay, we've already made like 2 Psychomotor / All Severed demos. Like I've already done so much crazy shit, right? We're writing what'll become, 8125, like.
But when a drum instructor says, "Play me a rock beat,"
yeah, and I'm like,
what does that mean to you?
Right? And he's like, all right, now play me another rock beat that's completely different. And I'm like, he's like, okay, play me a Latin beat. And I was like, did like a cross stick, and I was like, click, doom, 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 doom. And he's like, okay, play me some swing, play me some jazz. And I was like, ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding. And he's like, all right, now play a funk beat. I don't even want to imagine
what it was you did.
What my interpretation and I don't that's the one that I think I blocked out of my memory because
I'm locked away somewhere.
Yeah. If I like go on some crazy spirit journey, like someone blows dust in my face or some shit, that's the thing that's gonna come up. I'm gonna have to watch myself play that whatever quote unquote funk beat. You're
gonna walk down a dark hallway in your mind and unlock that last door, and it's gonna be an old projector with that moment playing.
Just on loop. And because I'm a funk drummer now, so I can't. It's probably like the most embarrassing thing.
I get it. Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, well, you understand that rock, Latin, and jazz exist and that they are different things. But first things first, you don't know how to hold the sticks.
Oh shit. Oh wow.
And so thus began the breaking apart of 6 years of bad habits and the rebuilding of Richard Wooten as turning me into not just a guy who could do some things on the drums, but a musician.
Right.
who played the drums. So that's all thanks to Joel.
Awesome.
So I'm eternally grateful to that man. So, but in the process of that, so I guess after a few months of that, he was like, okay, so you're going to join the jazz band here. I was like, oh, excuse me? And he was like, yeah, that's what you're doing. And so I was like, well, shit, I guess I have to start listening to jazz now to learn how to play this fucking music. And so almost, I don't think I listened to hardly any metal at all, sort of in between throughout 2002 and 2003.
Interesting.
Like I put the double pedal in the corner, and I just listened to jazz and Latin music and whatnot to try to immerse myself in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot harder at the time to sort of find a path through. This is 2002. Wikipedia didn't exist yet.
Right. You couldn't just go on Spotify and jazz greats playlist.
Right.
Let's do this.
Like I had to go and buy books and like read about, and then
Where are you going to find jazz recommendations in like a magazine or a book at the library?
Right.
Or something.
Right. And
or I guess you could have asked. Did you ask him?
Of course I did.
Yeah.
Of course I did. Yeah. And that's that. There's a bit there.
Okay.
But like. And so I was just sort of like set loose and to my own devices. And so there's this thing that happens when you're a drummer getting into jazz where it's like, oh, well, you need to listen to the great jazz drummers, right? You need to,
Here's the curriculum, basically.
I wish. It's not that clear.
Okay.
It's just kind of like, here's a list of the best drummers or the most important drummers. Go listen to things that they played.
Okay.
Go find records with them on it. Okay.
That is way harder, and that actually we'll get into it later, but that brings up a problem that I have with jazz and inversely with classical music. So we'll get into that later.
Interesting. So there's sort of so anyway, I'm going to switch out my headphones because these are slightly uncomfortable.
Okay. They look a little uncomfortable, actually. They look tight.
Yeah, they're isolation headphones. So they're meant so, but they're great for playing drums because I'm doing other shit.
I would say just like switch, but I think my head's way bigger than yours. So that would be good.
Yeah. I'm just gonna grab another hair headphone. So, but while I'm doing that,
okay,
talk about your general impressions and how this thing hit you.
So I was a little surprised at how much of this I just sort of knew already.
No shit.
Yeah. Whether by
no shit.
He said no shit. I told him you said no shit. Whether by, hearing it in, I don't know, like a grocery store or some shit these days, or in the background of a TV show, or on the radio probably, back when that was a thing that they played jazz on. Mm-hmm. It was like 91.7, I think, played.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of cool
like
stuff.
KTRU.
Back in the day, yeah. But I think probably mostly through like pop culture osmosis.
Okay.
Is my guess. I have the list up here.
God damn it.
But yeah, quite a few of these I was already familiar with, and actually the first one right out of the gate, "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy," threw me off really hard because I was like, "How the fuck do I know this?" And what I know is the version that the Buckinghams recorded in 1967.
Oh, interesting.
Which I can't fully tell from Wikipedia, but it seems like maybe somebody wrote it for them, and there's like lyrics to it and everything. So I heard this and I was like, I know this song, but no one's singing. That's weird.
And Buddy Rich would do a lot of arrangements like that.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? So like that was kind of like,
that makes sense.
Like that was kind of like one of the big band things is you take another tune and you sort of have a big band arrangement for it.
Right. Okay, yeah, because this was 68, and the song came out in 67, from what I can tell. But yeah, it's a great song. And then yeah, just a lot of this stuff. I'm like, I know that part.
Interesting.
I recognize this tune. Cool. So like I guess overall impression, I enjoy it. It sits in a weird spot for me, just very very generally, of the sort of music that I don't tend to put on to listen to. It's more of a background thing. Despite the fact that a lot of what I do put on to listen to is very clearly jazz inspired.
That is the jazz thing, right?
I guess so.
Or the jazz thing today here in 20, early part of 20th or 21st century here, 2020 and whatnot.
Yeah, it's 2022, by the way.
Yeah.
In case you forgot, because I keep forgetting.
In a lot of ways, I feel like I am still very much in
2020,
April 2020.
Yeah, totally.
So
100%. So yeah. Anyway, but by and large, I enjoy this, but I don't go out of my way to listen to it. But if it's on, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But even when I had this, so I listened to this twice all the way through. I was gonna go back and make notes, like I said, and then I just didn't. I was like, I can just say what I need to say. There aren't specific notes about this that I really need to make. I don't think.
Right.
Well, maybe we can get into that later. Anyway, I overall enjoyed it. Yes.
I'm glad. I'm glad because there's a lot of sort of a lot of the musical. There's a lot of musical journeys that I went on that were very social, right? Like like sort of like in junior high and the first part of high school, so much of that, it was almost like a competition of who could find a cool band or a cool record. And, you go out and you find a thing and you bring it back and show it to your friends. I don't know if everyone else felt that, but I felt that. Like I wanted to go find the cool thing and bring it back to show y'all.
I think I had a little bit of that in that I wore a lot of band T-shirts when not many people were doing that in sort of our grade, and so I got a lot of like, "The fuck is that on your shirt?"
Yeah,
Fear is your only god. What is that? Like in 8th grade?
I remember you. I feel like I have a memory of you wearing a Deftone shirt a lot.
Yeah, I had a Deftone. I had a Sponge T-shirt.
Oh, dude,
of
yes, you sure fucking did.
Right? and I remember like I think Renee Robinson was like, "What's those teeth on your shirt?" I was like, "Well, it's just an album that I like, and so on and so forth." But on some level, I wore it to get a reaction, but also I just like the music, so it's a weird.
Right.
But it was that sort of thing. Like, here's a weird thing that not many people know about. Maybe ask me about it, I guess, was my way of getting them to do that,
Right. Like, I remember getting into Slayer, and I remember giving, like, a Slayer mixtape to CJ, Menard on, like, a band trip or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, because I would make fucking mixtapes for people. All the fucking time, and you know what I mean, and like that was how Jeremy's also the other guitarist in All Severed, and so that's how, and me and Jeremy started playing our instruments at the same time, so our journeys were very much sort of step by step in parallel, right? But it was very much like, for the first few years, it's very much like this. Oh, you found a cool thing. Oh, I found a cool thing. Oh, right. And I really got into that, and I really wanted to go and find all the cool stuff. And then eventually got to a point to where it's like just people just didn't like what I like, no one else really liked Emperor in high school. No one, you know what I mean? People weren't, and so it was sort of similar in college whenever I went down the jazz rabbit hole. Like I wasn't like bringing this music back to y'all.
Right. So you were saying that most of your journeys were social, and I assumed that you were going to say this was a very isolated.
Well, my journey started to be more isolated.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But this one was by far the most isolated, because I wasn't gonna like bring like Love Supreme back to the fucking jam space while we're, like in the middle of like, it's like, hold on. All right. I'm not fucking weak. Oh, I'm not. It's like, hold on. Like Love Supreme. What, you know what I mean? Like, I don't.
On the one, I can't decide if Love Supreme, of the things on this playlist, if that song would be the best or the worst choice because of that vocal towards the end where he's just going, Love Supreme, Love Supreme.
Hey,
Love
dude,
Supreme,
that
Love
you
Supreme,
can't. That you better. I will fight over.
Put some respect on his name.
I will fight over all things having to do with that record.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's what was sort of interesting about this material is, and a lot of it is really, part of it is associated with me just like, how because I'm thrown to the fucking wolves by trying to, playing in a big band is fucking hard.
I would imagine.
It is one of the hardest things you can do as a drummer.
I was gonna say, especially as a drummer, you're the anchor for the entire band.
And your sheet music doesn't fucking make sense. I might have some laying around, but whatever.
What is it about it that doesn't make sense?
I really hope that I have a chart somewhere close by. I don't, god damn it. Whatever. I did some big band gigs last summer.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they're in a binder somewhere close by.
You want to stop the recording? We can start all over and
yeah,
go
we'll
back to this
start
one?
all
Okay.
over so
Okay.
I can prepare better.
Prep.
So yeah, a big part of this journey is about sort of like going, interacting with drums as a craft and not just drums as a, that sounds like how I feel.
Yeah. But sort of like as it relates to the larger band, as you
and the history of the instrument.
Okay.
and all of it, okay, well, how do I show up to a job, the job of being a drummer, the way that a fucking carpenter or plumber shows up? I was like, all right, what needs done? All right, let's get it fucking done.
right.
And that's a very different headspace than whenever you're a kid, a teenager, expressing yourself in your garage with your friends.
Right.
That's a very, very, very different. There's all sorts of, you're going to spend a decade trying to accumulate all the contextual knowledge that you need to inform those musical choices.
Right. You don't have the tools at your disposal yet.
Yeah, you don't have the technical tools, right? As far as like you, even if you knew what sounds to make and when to make them, your body can't do it.
Right. Right.
And then you don't have the musical tools. You don't know you don't know what to do. You don't know when to do it. You don't know how to do it.
Right. Or why you're doing it.
And so it was just this huge, so a lot of this was me trying to just immerse myself in so much of this just so I just didn't feel like I was sucking at these rehearsals, because it was like a community jazz band. And so there were lots of older people there who knew what they were fucking doing. And then there was this mixture of college kids, and some of those players in that fucking band were legit. Like they had been, like they were prodigies. Like there was this one dude, I'll talk more about him in the next episode, but his name is Joe Motter. And this guy's one of the best musicians I've ever played with in my life. And he's like, yeah, my parents decided to get me into music because I was 4 and I walked up to the piano and I tapped out the Knight Rider theme. So like, he's just one of those guys. It's like, oh,
right.
You just get it.
Right.
Like you just get it. And this has always been the thing that you were going to do.
Awesome.
Not someone who had sort of like I had been playing for 6 years before I had a lesson.
Yeah.
Not because I didn't try. I tried to get the band director at our high school to fucking help me out and teach me a thing, and he flat out refused. He flat out said, "You'll figure it out."
Wow. Okay.
Well, and this is while I was playing in the like stage band in high school.
Right.
You know, which was another shit show, of course. But
I had already quit by then, so I don't remember.
That was probably the right call.
I think so.
But yeah, so yeah, so the Buddy Rich song, I had gotten that way before the other ones because Buddy Rich is all over Modern Drummer magazine and they talk about him being the best drummer ever to ever. So I was like, well, so I went to Best Buy and bought the Buddy Rich CD that they had, and it was that one, and that was the first track on it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to like this. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I guess I'm supposed to like this.
And I listened to it. Don't get me wrong. I listened to it. I listened to this like yesterday all the way through, just to refresh myself with it. And like that song, I'm air drumming to that one.
Oh yeah, it's great. But like that's the mindset that you go into in that situation. Is like,
right.
Well, I guess this is supposed to be good.
I guess,
and I'm supposed to know why.
Right, which is not a bad orientation to have.
No. Because at least your mind is open at that point.
What else is interesting about the intro of the Buddy Rich Mercy Mercy is the beat he's playing there is a straight up that's very much like I think it's like Cold Sweat, but it's very much it's just like like that drum beat is straight up James Brown, and it's interesting to like was Buddy Rich doing that on purpose? Did Buddy Rich listen to James Brown and be like, oh, that's cool, I like that shit? Right. Or was Buddy Rich listen to James Brown and be like, oh, fuck those assholes, I can do that better? I really don't know.
Any of the above, probably, yeah.
Buddy Rich was a notorious asshole. So it very much could have been him just, like, oh, this is apparently what people like now. Fuck that. Just no way of knowing. Oh, but it also could have been like this joyous appreciation of James Brown. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But then the next group of it is all after I started taking drum lessons and stuff like that. And so
that was like the one thing that you went out on your own and found, and everything else.
The only thing I had experience with before I started taking drum lessons.
Okay. So that was before you even got into the...
Yeah, that was like 97, 98 that I got that Buddy Rich record.
Gotcha. It says that, yes. Okay.
And then the drum lesson and getting involved in Lee College was like in 2002.
Right.
And so there's sort of a few strands there, and one of them is like, well, these are the important drummers, go get shit that they play on.
Yeah.
And so they tell you Art Blakey, they tell you Max Roach, they tell you Tony Williams, they tell you Elvin Jones, they tell you Philly Joe Jones, and I could go on, but your big four that you're gonna guaranteed hear people talk about is Max Roach, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, and Tony Williams. And I can see clearly now that I understand the evolution of jazz music much better. Those guys are bebop, hard bop, and post bop drummers. That's shit that happened like 20 to 30 years after big band swing.
Mm-hmm.
This is like trying to sort of learn how to play, 50s doo-wop covers by listening to Rush. Yeah, technically everything you need is in there. Somewhere.
Right.
But it's not a pedagogically sound way to approach, learning how to make that music feel right.
So why do you think that? Do you think that is because those were the sort of branches that branched from that big band style and got to these other sort of arbitrary endpoints? that are different enough?
It is a. Tell me if this answers your question.
Okay.
It is a. It is a failure. There's two sort of opposite things. There's two important concepts that are kind of pulling in opposite directions when you're trying to teach someone how to be a jazz, quote, big band drummer, right? One is the history of the instrument, and so you want to teach them about the people who have changed the instrument and who have changed what is possible on the instrument and changed what the drummer's role can be in the music.
Right. That makes sense.
And those guys are a lot of the bebop guys. Like that's like after Max Roach, after Elvin Jones, after Tony Williams, what the position that the drummer is allowed or expected to hold in the band and how involved they're supposed to be in the band is different.
Gotcha.
So you have sort of this responsibility almost that I imagine a drum instructor would feel, that I would imagine someone would feel, this responsibility to, here's the big shit, right? Like, I need to teach you about the most important guys who have changed the way that people conceive of this instrument.
Or because if you're teaching someone in present day, that's kind of what they need to know. Like what's expected today and how did we get to where we are now?
Yeah, almost, right? But then it's also sort of this other side of like, well, you have a responsibility to play this certain style of music, and so you need to know what this style of music needs from drummers, right? And there's a lot of moving parts there in the pedagogy of it. The other thing about it is that bebop music is really fucking hard to play, and it's the music where the drum has really figured out a lot of what they could fucking do. And so if you learn how to play bebop music, which is a small group, bebop and post-bop and whatnot, you're going to have all the coordination you need to play big band stuff.
Right.
You're not going to have the contextual knowledge. You're not going to have the stylistic knowledge. You're not, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's where like the Rush comparison comes in. Because if you can do that, then you can do this. It's a superset of the.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But it doesn't get you there directly.
Right. And so what I should have, and it's, the short answer is just fucking hard, And then there's sort of another aspect, which is, like drum literature or drum magazine literature, which is all these guys are talking about the drummers that inspired them to play, or the drummers that inspired the people who inspired them to play.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, in the 60s, like Gene Krupa wasn't who inspired a lot of people to play who were writing drum magazines in the late 90s and 2000s, right? Tony Williams was who inspired a lot of those guys to play. Like Tony Williams inspired Vinnie Colaiuta, like Gene Krupa didn't inspire Vinnie Colaiuta to like pick up the drumsticks and shit. So there's that sort of generational thing. Because these are drummers who, like Gene Krupa was active much earlier than these bebop guys. There's decades in between these, and there's in my ignorance, I was like, well, jazz is just one thing,
right,
and it's not. There's like Dixieland, there's brass band, there's swing, there's big band swing, there's bebop, which is a huge difference between bebop and swing and big band.
I'm completely ignorant of these divides.
It's a complete chasm, if you will.
Okay, cool.
And because swing music, big band and swing music, it's dance music essentially is its roots. Like the jumping at the woodside track, or like In the Mood, or Sing Sing Sing. Sing 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 is the Benny Goodman track with the famous drum intro with Gene Krupa, the Chips Ahoy song, right?
God damn it. Why did that work so well?
But that's sing,
Yeah, anyway.
yeah, that's sing, right? So that's dance music, right? That's music. That's the song that
Knowledge accrued.
in the 30s that made someone want to fight or fuck. Like that was what that's
With good reason.
rock and roll of the day,
Some Brad shit.
right?
Yeah.
But it's you know, but then bebop was a thing that started to happen in the I guess it would have been in the mid 50s with like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and whatnot. I'm gonna put a quick caveat right here, which is I don't have all this history at my fingertips right now, so I am not a go-to resource on this. So very broad strokes here. Don't use me as a as an authority on any of this.
Don't cite this podcast.
But the thing about bebop that what it does that's very different than big band is it's small group. So you might have like 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
Bass, stand-up bass, drums, piano typically, and then, maybe one horn, maybe 2.
Okay, so this is gonna be a stupid question, perhaps, but when you refer to a group of musicians as a jazz trio, which is something you hear very often,
Yeah.
is that just the instrumentation involved that you're describing by that? Because why then is it not like a bebop trio? You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Well, because bebop, the term bebop is kind of rigid, and so, but technically you could say
Okay.
that.
You could say bebop trio. Just everyone says jazz trio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of these things are sort of synonymous.
Okay, that's fair.
I see what you're saying because, but yeah, like what they're playing is bebop is kind of synonymous with our modern concept of what jazz is.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when we think of jazz, because this is how when a small group is doing a jazz, this is normally what they're doing. They have the tune, right? You have the lead sheet, which might have a certain form, an A section, a B section, then another A section, and
Right.
the band will start off and they'll play the melody, they'll play the head, okay, which is they play the A section, then the B, and then whatever the form of the song is, and then everyone takes turns doing solos,
Right.
and then they come back and then they play the head again, the A, the B, or whatever, and then the song's over.
Yeah.
There were several tunes on this playlist that did that.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty common.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's the style.
Okay.
That's it. And so it seems so common now, but it was revolutionary at the time whenever people started to do that. And then, guys like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie were like pushing the complexity of that to the fucking nth degree with the harmonic complexity, the melodic complexity, the tempos, because what was happening is there was a shift sort of, okay, well, I'm not here to fucking entertain you. I'm here to be an artist. I'm here to express the potential of music through my instrument that I've devoted my life to. I'm not here to make you shake your ass.
Right.
This isn't about dancing. Fuck you. Like there's almost sort of like that kind of attitude.
I think that's what people these days especially think of when they think of jazz. I think that's the sort of common parlance that jazz exists in.
Yeah, yeah. Like you don't, and then later on you have like smooth jazz, which is just jazz with the edges rounded off, so it goes down easier.
It's like a jazz sphere, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not challenging or angular.
It's Kenny G is the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But a lot of stuff that I've played could be considered, like a lot of the sections and stuff in Small Deal could be accused of being smooth jazz adjacent, if you will.
Goes down smooth.
Yeah, it's jazz-ish. It's like, oh, here's some jazz chords or some jazz licks, but you don't have to think too hard to enjoy this.
Right. It's more digestible.
Yeah. It's really digestible. And so, but the philosophy of what a small bebop group was trying to accomplish and what those emotions they were trying to pull out of an audience, you know, in the 50s and then in the early 60s is very different than what a big band was trying to do.
Right.
And that was lost on me for the first part of this journey. Maybe because I'm so damn literal and so fucking stupid. Stupid in my own particular way. So,
well, fuck, I didn't know that till right now. So,
and for whatever reason, and I think that's another aspect is for us in the musical tradition that we grow up in, and because there was a crazy fucking thing that happened, in predominantly white households that in the late 60s where our parents stopped fucking listening to their parents' music.
yeah.
Or their parents didn't fucking listen to music. I don't fucking know. Whatever. But like for us, it's like musical history starts with like Elvis or the Beatles.
Right.
Like 20th century music starts in like with rock and roll. That becomes 0 point.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think, you know, there's I can't speak to this because it's not my experience, but I know that like hip hop artists grew up listening to jazz records. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing you hear. Like Nas's dad was like a jazz musician and shit like that. And so he grows up with all that sort of stuff around. So it feels like there's just the connective tissue of 20th century music goes back further if you didn't grow up feeling like the Beatles started music.
I'm willing to bet that, like with that observation, it probably has something to do with like the necessity for music to exist in your household.
What do you mean?
Because if you're doing well and things are cool, maybe you don't need the escapism of music to some extent.
That might be a little racist to say.
You think so?
It might be, but because it's sort of implying that, black people are having a hard time, so they need music, and I
mean, maybe, but like I almost look at it from the opposite direction of like more people were listening to it before, and maybe if you're more comfortable, you just kind of stop.
I don't think so. I don't. I think that it might have more. I mean, this is extremely speculative, right?
Right.
I don't know.
So is this? Yeah.
Right. I have no idea of all the like sort of cultural, wheels and cranks going on.
Right.
But I know that the important music of the 50s and the 40s that was played by black artists, which was most of the important music that was happening, if not all, right? I know that my grandparents wouldn't have enjoyed listening to it, especially if they knew that black people made it. And so take for that what it, and whereas I guess like I think that for whatever reasons that growing up in the kinds of households that we grew up in, the socioeconomic backgrounds that we grew up in, we don't have an innate sense of the musical history of the 20th century before Elvis or the Beatles.
Right.
And the reasons why, who knows? That's going to be difficult to speculate.
Yeah.
It seems that, I don't know. I don't really want to try to like speculate too much.
I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to get at with that is like, I feel like the reason for that is because to me, looking back at that time, it became less about the music and more about the spectacle. It became
You're talking about like Elvis and the Beatles?
Yes.
Sure.
It became less about what was being conveyed by the music and more about this is a pop spectacle now.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think that's more what people sort of glommed onto.
For sure.
And maybe it's just that got more people in general to pay attention to some music.
Well, it's
that weren't before paying
Sure.
attention to any music.
Well, and it's the baby boom thing. It's the post-war prosperity aspect as well. You know, it's all that shit as well happening.
I guess like it also goes against my argument, but anyway, yeah.
And it's also sort of like my fucking mother's parents grew up on farms and shit.
Right.
Like I don't know what music culture existed, if any, in that family.
Right.
So, you know,
like my grandmother loved the soundtrack from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Uh-huh.
For that, I think partially for that very reason, was because it reminded her of things she listened to when she was young. She was born in like 36.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess like all of this, I don't know. It's a tricky thing to try to sort of.
I hadn't really ever thought about that, but that's.
I know that it's a thing that I grew up with this sense that like, well, the music that happened before 1956 or before, you know, Elvis and the Beatles was just like whatever it was. It's like, oh, some old timey shit like that. And
at least for our generation, I think that's pretty apt.
Yeah. And I don't think that I'm going out on a limb to speculate that is for racist reasons on, you know,
one way or the other, probably
via institutional racism or cultural or whatever that, you know, slight or overt, that I did not have a concept that black people were making important music. And I guess that's really what that's sort of really maybe what I'm trying to the point I'm really trying to stumble into here is that I didn't have that sense growing up. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like the important music is Beatles and Elvis and Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd, and this is all the important music, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we probably don't want to get too further into this, but like, that's also very like surface level. I feel like, because even if you get into, if you just look one micron deeper, you're like, oh, Little Richard, oh, Chuck Berry, oh, and huge like pop names also.
Sure.
But then what do we, you know?
Yeah, sure.
What does that really prove? Nothing really.
Well, I mean, it's that's this is a subtle thing we're trying to, I guess, articulate. But
yeah.
So racism exists. It's a thing. Blah 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 blah.
Turns out it existed in music in the 50s.
Yeah, and it certainly affected my perception as a young man of 20th century music as a whole.
Absolutely. Same. Me too. Yes.
There you go. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that it's that sort of thing that makes it very easy for us to sort of be like, what do you mean jazz was a thing that started in this time and like grew and evolved? And because you didn't have to explain to me when I was a teenager that rock music from the 80s sounded different than rock music from the 70s.
Right.
You didn't have to explain that to me. But here I am, you know, here I was in college and someone had to explain to me that jazz music from the fucking 60s sounded different than jazz music from the 50s, from the 40s, from the 30s, from the 20s. You know?
Yeah.
Why did I assume that just no evolution and growth and pushing of the art form occurred, you know, until the white people I knew of picked up instruments, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is all very, I'm off in the weeds. So, but yeah, let's dig into some of the tracks, I guess.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so the first, I was like, well, Miles Davis is important, so I went and got a Miles Davis greatest hits fucking CD.
Right.
Which is so stupid to think about, like greatest hits.
Of Miles Davis.
And to think about like, well, you're going to listen to these songs, some of which are made decades apart, and then you're going to have a sense of what the fuck is going on. And Miles Davis' career is so crazy and so prolific and so amazing in so many ways. We could do like 4 podcasts just on Miles Davis. But these are some of the tracks that stuck out to me. So I put So What from Kind of Blue, which is like the best-selling jazz record of all time. And so this song is generally the song you play for people to, like, if you want them to have a good first experience with jazz, this is almost always the song that you play.
Okay.
And it's not really a bebop song. It
Right.
doesn't have the, like, here's the tune, da-da-da. It's modal, what's called modal jazz, which I don't understand enough about that to really explain it well.
Okay, I was gonna ask because I don't know.
It's based around the modes. That's all I can tell you. And it's not, here's the melody, solo over these changes. All right, you solo, you solo, you solo. I mean, it still has the you solo, you solo, you solo, you solo. But what was interesting to me, going back and revisiting some of this, was sort of really comparing and if anyone listens to this playlist, I really suggest what you do is to sort of take note of who is soloing at each time, and, you know, like, listen to a Coltrane solo and then compare that to a Cannonball Adderley solo on the next tune, or compare that to a George Coleman solo on the next tune, and sort of, because that is sort of where the real art is in this. And that's something I haven't really understood until recently. And you don't need to be able to articulate it, you know, but these different musicians, they have a different feel,
Right.
you know, when they solo. And you can tell when fucking Coltrane solos, because the shit is everywhere. Like, there is a religious fervor the way that he, like, attacks the saxophone. Like, he is, you know, he's like an inspired preacher, you know. Like, he is always going for it in these recordings, in this era, you know. And you can tell, like, it stands at such stark contrast to some of the other, like, saxophone solos and whatnot, like the solo on, like, Milestones, like the next track. Like, Cannonball goes down a lot easier than sort of like whatever the fuck Coltrane's going for. So,
I mean, I feel like as a guitarist, that's a pretty simple concept to latch onto, because you typically hear about, or experience even, like, two guitarists can pick up the exact same instrument and sound completely different.
Right.
And that's a very common thing. And maybe it's to do with, like, the voicing of the guitar and where it sits, sort of like in the register. I don't know exactly, but that's a common sentiment anyway.
Yeah. And you know, and especially when you sort of have, you know, you've taken, and I guess, like, that's kind of the thing about jazz, is that you have it's the form and no form, right? Like, you gotta, and that was the thing that Joel talked about a lot, was that, like, he didn't have a lot of respect. I mean, you know, and he was a little bit of at the time, I took some lessons with him later on, and he had sort of softened up a bit, but he was a very sort of, like, you know, kind of like your typical old head, straight ahead, you know, like, kind of very, like, this is the right way to do it, and this is da-da-da-da-da, and
Right.
like, he didn't have a lot of respect for people who could, it's like, okay, cool, man, so what? You can, like, pick up the fucking horn and just kind of go for it and make some stuff that sounds cool, so fucking what? If you can play outside of the changes, it doesn't mean anything unless you can play inside the changes. The changes meaning the chord changes of the tune.
Right.
And that was at the time for me kind of like a philosophical conundrum to try to unpack. It was like, well, if it sounds good though, right? You know? And so like this idea of it only sounds good if I can parse out your intentions. And that of course opens the door to a lot of like fuckery, elitist gatekeeping.
Right. Because the question there is like you say, if it sounds good, it sounds good. If it sounds good to the end listener, right, then whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's all they care about. If you're coming at it from the perspective of a drum instructor or even just a musician, I guess, if you can play within the changes, you're showing that you know what you're doing.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. There's like, you're proving that you can do it.
Well, and then his thesis was that it's okay for you to play outside of the changes if you can play within them.
That's what I mean, yeah.
You know,
if you can prove that you can do it, then go for it because you've already proven yourself.
Right. Right. And and so it was problematic for me. I had a hard time wrapping my head around it because it's like, well, it put up, for me, being the very literal, you know, kind of person I was, it put up these like, well, how the fuck will I ever know if I can play inside? So when am I able to fucking find my voice and express myself in this fucking language? And I don't feel like I was able to effectively do that until really recently.
Okay. So how do you feel about that now?
What do you mean?
How do you feel about what he said about that? His take on that.
Fuck, I don't know.
Because like I get it, but again, like it depends. It's contextual. Like if you're coming at it from a musician's standpoint, then I totally see his point.
Yeah, it's kind of like
because that's all you're doing at that point is proving that you can do it.
It reminds me of. So there's that saying, right? Less is more. Okay. Which my caveat to that is like, no, more is more.
My caveat is the exact opposite. So now we have 100% of the possibilities.
but more.
Well, less could be less, I guess, as well.
But more isn't always right, I guess.
Okay.
And
well, the original statement didn't say anything about being right.
It didn't, right? and so that idea, because you'll run into that idea. I don't know as much now, but for a long time you would always run into that. Less is more, man. Less is more. Less is more, man. And
it just depends, yeah.
It just depends. And so, but less is more should never be the modality that you are using when you are practicing. Like you should be, when you're practicing your instrument, especially if you are trying to practice in a way that you can play with other people, you need to be accumulating as much headroom, quote unquote, as possible.
Yeah.
And what's going to serve you better? What's going to serve you better in the future? Learning this song and learning to solo within these changes? Or are you just going for it right now and being able to express okay, cool, man. You expressed yourself very well today at, 9:30 p.m. or whatever. Good job. You expressed yourself. You made a sound that sounded like you felt it sounded good. Cool. But how is that going to help you on the gig tomorrow? How's that going to help you on the gig next month? How's that going to help you grow as a musician, right?
As a musician, exactly.
And how is that going to help you serve the music that you haven't heard yet?
Right.
Right? Because that's the other thing. And that's why jazz musicians are always the best fucking session musicians, in my experience, because they've spent so much time having to just go by the seat of their pants, but within these changes in this very sophisticated way that they are just masters of being present and reacting to the music. And so, like, you just fucking give them a set of headphones and give them a fucking chart and press record, and everything they play is going to be musical, and it's going to be in time, it's going to be in key, it's going to be reactive to what's going on. It's going to almost all be usable.
Yeah.
And you don't get that from all kinds of musicians. And
not very often, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, the way I see it is the way I view what you just described is like you're building up your tool set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you have to do in that situation, because that's what that situation calls for.
Right.
And then it can be used however you need it to be used.
Right. And so yeah, like, I don't know, man. It's a tricky thing. And a lot of people, go ahead.
But like you said, as a musician, I think that's still the key point there, is if you're coming at it from the perspective of a musician, that matters. Mm-hmm. If you're not, then it doesn't matter anymore.
Well, and it's also sort of, that doesn't really, like, when you're there in the practice room with your instructor and he's like, no, we need to go through this song again because while you were soloing right there, you lost the form. Mm-hmm. It's about the, it's about the discipline, because that discipline and being able to stick to that script is going to allow you freedom later. Mm-hmm. And so I guess in a sense I agree with him, but it's a matter of perspective, right? And sort of the way that he pitched it was almost as an audience member, which is bullshit. So like if you as an audience member are sitting there like listening to a group do a jazz and you're
is that like, what he said? Just do a jazz? Or is this you saying this?
This is me saying it because I think it's silly.
It is. Okay, go ahead. Proceed.
And you're listening to a small group do a jazz, and they, and this soloist is in the moment, and the audience is loving what he's doing, and he's going for it, blah 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 blah. And then in the middle, like you can tell because you know the tune, you know the changes, and he's kind of drifted outside of it. And blah, 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 blah. But it's in the moment and it's inspired and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then you go, you know what? That's not good. Then fuck you. Like, see yourself out. Fuck it.
Agreed.
Fuck you.
Agreed.
And
because there's shit on this playlist that does that in my mind.
It absolutely does that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely does that.
Okay.
And
because I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
Where are you going,
Are
John?
you fucking up? Did you leave the room? Are you playing with somebody else now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking at you, John. Looking at you, John. And so, but as a sort of, and I think that is maybe, and this is the other thing that's like really tricky because when was I taught this lesson? Fucking 20 years ago. So he'd probably be really pissed. Listen to this right now. Because he was like, I know that is not how I fucking meant that. But he was a shithead 18-year-old and couldn't understand. How the fuck was he going to understand what I was trying to tell him when he couldn't even play a goddamn swing beat? And so, so that's sort of like the kind of the thing. But there is sort of a thing that a lot of people, it's less so now, but for a while, like I think because a lot of us ran into these kind of jazz instructors that were sort of, very rigid and very like, well, I'm going to teach you how to play jazz because that's the real music. That's the real stuff. And then if you can play jazz, then, if you need to play some of that other shitty music for money, you'll be able to. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the attitude. And that's real gross and shitty and stupid and not an inspiring environment to be in. And so, but that was kind of like the environment that those guys grew up in. Right. So it's just, but what's cool now is that jazz, and for for a while now, everyone's understanding that jazz is really about fusion now. And it's about taking this rich tradition of jazz and infusing it with other things and letting it still and letting other things influence it.
Right.
And so it's whereas you know, like there was some weird opinions about modern music at the time that I heard.
Back then?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That I heard that you would never hear someone say now you would never hear like a music instructor say now. But yeah, so like, so what? Now, I forget the exact mark that it happens at, but you know, about like maybe 2 minutes in or sort of whatever. There's one of the best crash cymbals in the history of drumming. If you know the song "So What," you know what I'm talking about. But it is just the most beautiful. It's just the most perfect hit of a crash cymbal that's ever fucking occurred. Yeah. In interviews, he was like, I was afraid it was too loud. So, but yeah, and so the next track is Milestones. That has...
Yeah, this one I also instantly knew.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
I don't know how, but yeah.
So yeah, you've got Cannonball on alto, Coltrane on tenor. Their solos are quite a bit different. You have Philly Joe Jones on drums, and so Philly Joe. It's interesting to me how each of these drummers seem like just such a different character to me, just from their playing. You know, Jimmy Cobb is very, very just like I'm gonna give this song what it needs. Like he's very sort of supportive and present. He's not gonna overshadow anything. You know, Philly Joe Jones is a little more sort of like hip and I guess sophisticated with his comping, but still sort of very like, you know, very sort of present, I guess. I mean, present is not the right word, but just he's digestible. I feel he's understandable. Okay. He's still supporting the music very much. Oh, God damn it. They're all supporting the music. This is tricky shit to talk about, yo. I'm so sorry. But yeah, Philly Joe is great. He's really known for incorporating a lot of rudimental vocabulary into his soloing, which you don't really hear. There's not a Philly solo on there, but anyway, you can't go wrong with listening to anything that Philly Joe Jones has ever done. And the next one is 7 Steps to Heaven. So this is Tony Williams, which you've heard me talk about Tony Williams before, because he was the one that I compared sort of Joey Jordison to. Mm-hmm. And so Tony Williams is a big fucking deal. Because this track, he did that when he was like 17.
Wow.
Okay. And he arrived at 17 at being like a fully formed artist somehow. And so he's like playing, he is approaching the drum set and music differently than other drummers have.
Right.
And it's very much like, keep your own time, motherfucker. I'm playing drums and I got shit to say here.
Right.
I'm not here to help you make sure you know where you are in the fucking song. I'm not here for you. And
at 17.
And before that, a drummer was judged by how well they served the rest of the music.
Right.
You know, and Tony, I mean, and this was like a gradual change that sort of happened throughout bebop because, but you know, like, you know, but Tony is sort of the figurehead of that, the sort of
the genesis of that, perhaps
the end point.
Oh, okay.
If you will, he is the culmination.
Gotcha. Okay.
Of drums for drums' sake, motherfucker.
Okay.
And so you can even hear it. You can hear it even then in the earliest version of his approach. So, and then you got some Art Blakey, which is great. Art Blakey plays a style of bebop called hard bop.
Okay.
Which is a little more blues based, and it's just a little more. It's a little more, I don't know how to say it. It's just a little more meat and potatoes, I guess, like just a little more, I don't know. I don't feel confident making these generalizations. This is because all I'm doing is telling you shit that I've read in a book or seen in a documentary. This isn't shit I experienced, you know. So I'm gonna back up for a second. Because I made some notes too. So something I wanted to mention with these tracks. So on that milestones, so
Yes.
there's like in the outro, there's like a flubbed note that like Miles has in one of the runs or whatever.
Okay.
Like on the melody, right? And it brings up sort of an interesting idea of how these tracks were recorded, which is very much contrast to sort of how we think about recording and how we grew up thinking about recording, where it's like these are just 5 dudes or however many dudes in a room and they just did a fucking take.
Yeah.
And they might have done like 3 takes and they just picked their favorite one to put on the record.
Right. Not even the best one, just the one that they like the most.
Right. And it's like, oh, well, that note, I fucked that note up there, but that fucking solo that you did was ripping, so that's the one we're gonna fucking take.
Right.
There was no like chopping shit up and stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe more to the point, not even any intentionality behind like that fucking messed up note worked. I'm gonna keep that. It was just like something about this worked well enough that we want to keep it.
Yeah. Right. And so it's just I think it's something to like keep in mind that in a lot of these bands, man, these groups, they weren't like well rehearsed. Like these aren't like they didn't like have a few weeks of rehearsal before doing the record. They showed up for the date. Like these motherfuckers just sounded that good all the time. It's a different fucking level, you know. 7 Steps to Heaven would have also been my first exposure to Herbie Hancock, which would be really important to me later on. The Art Blakey song is great. And so the thing about Art's styles is it's just a little more, his style is just so much more forceful. Like there's just, when you listen to it, like there's just no guessing. You just fucking know where the beat is. You know where, sure, there it is. And also he was the leader of that band. So the way that he's cueing everything is just very much like, hey, motherfucker, you know? And that's another thing that's funny is you can, like on that Buddy Rich tune, if you listen to it with headphones, you can hear Buddy yelling.
Oh.
Before transitions, you know? Like, or like whatever, and then you hear, ah! You know?
I think I did hear that then. I just didn't realize what that was.
You'll hear that all over this kind of shit, you know? Because that's kind of your job as a drummer is to cue the band and stuff like that. So,
something I enjoyed about the Art Blakey tracks specifically there were that they were introduced by Pee Wee Marquette, who I knew beforehand solely from the what was the name of that band? Us Two or something like that. The mid-90s sort of student jazz band that miraculously had like a huge hit with Cantaloupe.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
If you know that song, because the song itself, that track is introduced, it's got like a clip of Pee Wee Marquette introducing it.
Okay.
And he's talking about like, oh, welcome to Birdland this evening. We got a recording for Blue Note Records.
Mm-hmm.
And then they played their song.
Okay.
It's a fucking awesome song. But that was like one of the weird like jazz inspired tracks that I was into when I was like a kid.
Okay.
Because it was on one of those I think it was on one of those Buzz Clips collections.
Oh, okay.
The MTV things. But yeah, like I knew him from that.
How about that?
Right? It was very strange. And so when I heard this, I was like, oh shit, is this that clip? But no, it's just that he always sounds like that because it's fucking Pee Wee Marquette sound. And I had to figure that out.
I don't know what you're talking about
Completely
at all.
different approach for this.
I wonder if they were playing Cantaloupe Island, which was
perhaps
a Herbie Hancock tune.
Yeah.
So
I think that's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. And so like this, so there was this Art Blakey. Wayne Shorter is also in the group and also so like another thing that Art Blakey was known for was he was sort of known for kind of cultivating hot shit musicians and sort of like giving them an opportunity to sort of learn their craft and do all that shit, and then they would go on to be sort of prolific artists in their own right.
Right.
You know, because Wayne Shorter's like one of the best saxophone players ever fucking lived. You know, so is Lee Morgan, who played trumpet on this track. You know, and Art Blakey did that. Like he kept doing that. He did that. He did like that in the 70s and 80s and shit. Like Wynton Marsalis played with Art Blakey, you know, and shit like that. It's all right if you don't know who Wynton Marsalis is.
I don't know who that is.
This is a different universe for you. It's okay. But yeah, so I went to like an Evolution Records there in Baytown.
Yeah, where the hell was that at? I can't remember.
It was over there off of Alexander. So Old Baytown.
Yeah.
Sort of on one of those like Bowie. I think I don't know why that's what I'm thinking of, but
Okay.
just one of those side streets there, like fucking records / head shop, you know. And but yeah, these were the two of the jazz CDs they had. A Max Roach CD called Carduba, which is out of print and re-released as Mop Mop, which is not on Spotify.
So I was wondering why you didn't include any of that.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay.
Well, and I found them on YouTube, and they're all just kind of really obtuse and weird. And so I was like, I don't know if these would be the best anyway, but
Gotcha.
But yeah, and those were the two fucking so again, this is in this sort of like period of like, well, let me just go fucking listen to important drummers. You know, I still haven't like found the fucking script, you know, man. I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I'm still trying to sort of like with no context understand what this fuck is. Just let me try to absorb this shit by osmosis and whatnot. But yeah, so there's the Max Roach tune. So this Max Roach is a sort of it's called For Big Sid, which is a reference to Big Sid Catlett, who is an important swing drummer. And so Max is one of the most important drummers of the 20th century, because he really brought a lot of respect and sophistication to the instrument. And so what he's doing here with this solo piece is he is playing like an A section and a B section on the drums. Like that's the melody. And he plays that, and he does the whole bebop form, right? Of like, here's the A, here's the B. Now I'm going to solo. And then he comes back to the head, you know, and it's sort of like, look, you can do that just on the fucking drums, right? We did at the music school I was teaching at, we did a faculty recital, and I did a version of this.
Cool.
And it was funny because I'm like next to all these like fucking just masters of performance, like degree having classical musician types who are like gonna play in these fucking all over the fucking, you know, just this incredible fucking classical music, you know.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna make some shit up, y'all. But you know, it was fun, man. They all loved it. It was great. Whatever.
Worked out.
Yeah, it was great. And so then it sort of gets into this next sort of block of stuff, which is I got a hold of the Ken Burns 5 CD set.
Okay, so was this? I was curious about that. I didn't look it up or anything, but was this like a documentary that he did on jazz?
Yes, and it's an incredible documentary.
Okay.
Highest possible recommendation.
Okay.
I was not able to get a hold of the documentary at the time.
Gotcha.
I was only able. I spent like fucking $80 or some shit, or $70 buying the fucking 5 CD box set of it. You know.
God.
Because I was like, oh, this has all the important fucking songs on it, I guess.
$80 for a 5 CD box set seems so insane.
Isn't that crazy?
But I know I paid it for some shit.
And I would just like fucking put a CD in my car, and that would be what I would listen to for the week. And then I'd do the next one. I'm just trying to fucking absorb this music, like just floundering.
Right.
And there's so much great stuff on there. Like it's a great compilation. The documentary is incredible. Highest possible recommendation on the documentary. I wish I'd have been able to see it then, but I couldn't get a hold of it then.
I think let me look at the. Did you add something besides what's on the spreadsheet? I need to. Let me just look at the playlist because I feel like there were 4 of these tracks instead of 3 on the playlist. Hang on, let me get there real quick. What was it called? Early Jazz. Okay, here we go. Heebie-Jeebies, Black Beauty, Jump Into the Woodside, and St. Thomas. What's missing from there?
So there's also Strange Fruit, which is also on there, but it's just not. I put it in a different spot.
Okay, they are all on here. You just have this listed as Saxophone Colossus versus.
Oh yeah, that's why.
I see.
That's
I see.
why.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think all 4 of these tracks I actually knew.
Mm-hmm.
Which was I didn't expect.
That's pretty awesome. And so, I just sort of went and just sort of cherry picked for this one, for the ones that were on there, because it's kind of hard, because it's sort of like, okay, well, some of this stuff would be very, like, clearly these are the seeds for what would be important to me later. But who knows how it fucking hit me at the time. I didn't hear it and be like, fuck yeah, Louis Armstrong, motherfuckers. But at some point when I got into New Orleans music and got into brass band stuff, I was like, oh, dude, Louis was on to some shit, And so, I wanted to put some Louis Armstrong on there. It was particularly like sort of a brass band kind of vibe. I wanted to.
And there was like no percussion on there, really.
I feel like it's there.
If it is, it's way in the back, but I didn't really notice anything at all.
Hold on. Let's go to the tape. I'll tell you.
Roll it back.
Well, and I mean, like the way that shit was recorded, yeah, you can't.
Oh, maybe, sure.
Yeah, maybe not.
I couldn't notice anything, at least.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but like you have like a whole band gathered around one fucking microphone, and you couldn't have the bass drum close to the microphone because all that air would like actually break the fucking microphone and shit like that. So the
drummer's sitting off like 20 feet that way, and everyone's huddled around the mic.
Kinda, yeah. And so yeah, man. Even just listening back, man, that shit just makes me so happy. It just makes me smile. I love that shit. And it was later on that I would really kind of fall in love with New Orleans music specifically, and that became extremely important to me. But this was probably the first time I heard it.
Gotcha.
So you got to have some Duke Ellington.
Yeah. Like these tracks, like I said, I sort of knew all these somehow or another. Jump Into the Woodside and St. Thomas specifically are things where I was like, oh, fuck, it's this song.
Oh, okay, cool.
Let's do this.
Oh, that's great, man. That's hilarious. So St. Thomas is... So now we sort of get into... Before we do that, so isn't it crazy how on that Black Beauty track, isn't it crazy how like Duke Ellington is able to sound like a full fucking band by himself?
Oh, is he? Oh.
To me, like it...
I didn't realize it was... and I guess I don't know what you mean. I'll have to go back and listen to it again.
Okay, because it's just him. It's just solo fucking piano.
Okay, so it is just him. Oh, okay.
And it's like, oh, this makes me feel the way that this makes me feel the same way that this would feel if a full band, like if you had a drummer and you had a bassist and you had like, he's somehow sort of with, minimally covering like all of the fucking bases. And
right.
I think that's what makes one of the things that makes him so important. So, all right. So now we begin to sort of St. Thomas, there's sort of this gray area, right? So after I joined the band, the next step was Joel was like, all right, well, you're auditioning for the All-State Band.
Oh, shit. Surprise.
And so St. Thomas was one of the tryout tunes. Okay. And so I had to learn a calypso beat for it. And I still remember that whole thing. Because he was like, all right, well, here's 3 different calypso beats. You can use the one that you want, right? And so one is like this kind of between the hi-hat and the snare, like a, pretty straightforward, and then the other one was like a little more fancy. This one's like almost like a 311 beat where you're doing like a open hi-hat thing, like a like.
Okay, I know what you mean.
Right, and then he was like, or you can do this one. And it had like this 4-way coordination thing going where you're doing the hat on 2 and 4, and you're doing like a dunch with your feet, and then doing a like this kind of fucking thing, like going between like a cross stick and a tom, and just this shit's going everywhere, right? And like for me at the time, this blew my fucking mind. I was like, how can you even fucking do this, right? But I don't know, man. I had some free time that weekend, and I felt froggy, so I learned that beat, and I had to learn it one note at a time. I was like, all right, so on that first, okay, so I'm gonna do the fucking. It's gonna be the.
You literally had to teach your body how to move in that way to learn that beat.
It's like, okay, the first beat is gonna be the bass drum and the ride cymbal. Okay. All right, and then the second one is. Just ride cymbal. Wait, no, it's ride and snare. Okay. Then the second one is... And so I did all that, and I programmed the whole thing into my body, and I got it sounding good, right? And I go in, and I play it, and I'm like, And I'm like, didn't I do good? And he was like, where's the hi-hat?
No!
You got to put the hi-hat on 2 and 4. And I was like, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't just like add it in.
Right.
I had to go back to square one.
Because you didn't build it up that way.
Yeah, I had to reprogram it,
Oh, shit.
So, and then check it out. The audition process is what we had to do. I had to like play put the fucking tape of the tryout music, which was like without drums, right? Put that through a PA, put the speakers behind me, right? And then put another tape recorder out in front of the drum set.
Oh.
And record it.
Oh, wow.
And then I sent the tape. I mailed the tape. TMEA auditions,
Wow. Weird.
Yeah.
But also, like, understandable in a weird way.
The fuck else were you going to do in 2002?
Right. Fuck.
Right. And so, but I ended up getting in, which was crazy. I was second chair, so I ended up playing percussion. And the drummer that was first chair, that dude I'm still not as good as that guy.
Damn.
But yeah, so I wanted to include St. Thomas for that fucking reason. So
That's a great song.
It's great. And it's Max Roach on there also again. So
yeah.
He sort of just really kind of laid out the vocabulary and sort of like, and the thing, this is going to sound like I'm talking shit on him, but whatever. I feel like when you listen to Max Roach's playing, you can hear that his vision is almost sort of beyond his technical ability. Like the way that he conceives of the drums, the way that he conceives of the music is bigger and more grand. And that's kind of like, there's almost like a punk rock professor vibe to him, because he's like, he's going all the way to the edge. Like he's not really worried about like kind of keeping it together, I guess. But there's also something very sort of like, I don't know. It's very difficult to describe without sounding like I'm insulting. But it's just like you compare him to what would come later, which was like Tony. And Tony just everything is just perfect. Like everything is like, that's exactly what he meant to fucking do.
Right.
Like the roll, the articulation is all just crisp, you know, and like you get that feeling from Max. It's like he's going for something. Like he's reaching beyond because he has this idea of what he's trying to express, and the concept of it. But it's like, you know. But then again, he's like a fucking pioneer.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, what standard should you fucking hold him to? You know?
Yeah. No, I get that feeling. Like I remember. I can remember feeling that way about some guitarists in kind of in the 60s, I guess. Maybe even Hendrix a little bit in a way. Where it just feels like he's out of control trying to like channel some bullshit from deep within, and here's how he gets it out. Here's just how he gets it out. But then you got somebody like David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, who plays exactly what he wants to play, exactly how he wants to play it. And it's just as amazing both ways, but it's two very different.
Yeah, like there's this. I think it's Ian Mackay,
Fugazi,
and Minor Threat.
Yeah.
But I think he has a quote talking about some shit of.
I got a lot of quotes. Honestly.
He's only said one thing ever, and it's the thing that I know about. But something sort of to the effect like there's like a charm of when people are trying to sort of play music that's like right outside of their ability, and sort of this idea of that sound of reaching.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of there's a certain urgency and magic to that, and you know, like it makes me think of sort of like those early thrash metal records and things like that or which is like a double-edged sword in a sense, because it created an idea that the way that you record stuff in the studio is you go in and you just got to get that one right take. Like you don't have to actually be able to do this stuff all the time, every time.
Right.
You just got to get it good enough once on the studio, and then live, you just need to make sure you bleed everywhere and it'll be fine.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. If you can prove the one time that you can do it, that's all you need, because then people can just listen to that.
Right.
And then from then on, just like prove to everyone that you meant it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Whether you can do it or not. It's like,
right.
Remember that shit back here you heard? Look at it. Bleh, whatever.
Yeah. It's like, no, it doesn't matter because I'm fucking like my sticks are, every hit, my elbow is above my ear. And,
right.
You know, like, I mean, I remember seeing like fucking us seeing Slipknot in like 2003, right whenever Volume 3 came out. I'm pretty sure it's 2003. It might be 2004. I don't know. Whatever.
Can't remember.
It was at Verizon or whatever it was called at that time.
Yeah.
And like fucking Joey's got fucking popcorn. You know, fucking double bass happening, and it's just like, oh well, that happens sometimes. This shit's not permitted now. That like the standard of metal drumming live is so today. You can fucking, you lose your goddamn job. You fucking do that shit, you know? Like you can't. And part of it is just that like people are used to hearing perfection. You know what I mean? All the time. Like you can't. Like if you go to like a death metal festival, like Summer Slaughter or something like that, from like the band that starts at 3 p.m. all the way up, you will the shittiest band on the bill. You're not gonna hear that.
It's a rock solid meter the entire time.
You know, so it's just interesting, sort of how that has sort of changed, you know. But yeah, that's been a hard one for me to adjust to.
Yeah,
because I was all just that was like the one thing I could do that no one else could do, was I could just like go raw on the fucking drum. Like no one could go raw like quite like I could. So that was the thing that, you know, of course I was sloppy because I was like playing as hard and as fast as I could all the time.
Right. which I mean at the time was like a novel sort of thing in our space at least.
Right. Yeah, it was very novel because we weren't we weren't trying to sound good.
Well, arguably neither were the bands that weren't going raw the whole time, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, like, well, we never had a bassist, or we didn't have a consistent bassist.
Yeah. What a weird thing to say now.
Like, I mean, well, Ricky was there for a solid like year or two.
Yeah, he was there for a bit.
And so, but when we really like came into our own, we were sans. So we were like, oh, this is not dance music. This is like, no one's gonna move or groove to this. This is just pure blah.
Yeah. Right.
How fast are we playing it tonight? I don't know, Richard.
How fast are you gonna go?
How, so
faster than normal, okay.
But yeah, I don't know. It was fun. I imagine.
Yeah.
There is this thing too, right? Which is if you're not going to be able to go out there and like be fucking perfect machine, sound like Fear Factory or Meshuggah, then you probably shouldn't try. Like just go be a mess, and just go put on a good show and be a mess, maybe.
Yeah, do what you feel.
I don't know what that has to do with Max Roach, but here we are.
But the weather report.
Yeah. So what'd you think of this one?
I knew this one as well.
There's been some other versions of it too.
Yeah.
The Buddy Rich Big Band did a lot of versions of it.
Okay.
So yeah, how'd this one hit you?
I think the second time I listened to the playlist, I skipped like halfway through it because I was like, "This is just gonna go on for a long time, isn't it?" I know what this is. So okay, let me back up a little bit and sort of address this whole thing generally.
Yeah.
Which is there isn't a lot. So despite the fact that I knew some of these tunes here, there isn't a lot of this that I would feel compelled to sit and just listen to.
Mm-hmm.
I get the idea and I enjoy that idea and I appreciate that idea. But note for note, second by second, it doesn't always do a lot for me. And it, like I said before, like when we started out, like this to me typically is more like it's not something I seek out to listen to, despite the fact that I listen to a lot of jazz inspired stuff. It's more like I could be cool with this in the background, but I'm not going to put it on.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, it's just not the sort of thing that I seek out. And it's not even that it's not even that it all doesn't do a lot for me. It's just that, like, I don't know. There's something intangible about it that I don't quite understand.
Right.
Or not. That's a bad way to say it. Not that I don't comprehend what's going on. It's just that it's not quite what I'm looking for at all times.
It's a pretty unique.
I would need to be in a very specific headspace doing very specific things to put straight up jazz or bebop or anything.
Right. I don't think I was really able to really get my head around it because now I love all of it.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Put a pin in that. I
want to specify that I don't know that I don't understand it. Maybe it is. I think I do pretty well. It's just that some of it is like, okay, I see what you're doing.
I got you.
I'm good.
Right. And so I can really enjoy listening to this. I thoroughly love almost all of the stuff on this playlist, which I'll address that in a second.
Okay.
But like all the Art Blakey stuff, the Miles Davis stuff, I thoroughly love that through and through. All of it, the Louis Armstrong, all of it. But I didn't whenever I was first exposed to it, and I think that it took me having more contextual awareness about how this music was created, how this music was performed live, how, you know, all these missing pieces to sort of understand the aims and the goals and the headspace of the musicians performing this music, to sort of be able to almost and seeing a lot of live jazz myself.
Yeah. Because that's a big part of it, I feel like.
Yeah, and then it started to sort of become, you know, now I can sort of, you know, when I listen to this, I imagine being in the room, right? You know what I mean? And I sort of have like this, it's not just about the sound, it's also about these guys getting together, you know, or, you know, like these people getting together and fucking making magic out of nothing.
Right.
And
it's more about the artistry at that point.
I guess that's a good way to say it.
That makes sense.
And I think that heightens my appreciation for it, and also what keeps it interesting is just how sophisticated the language of jazz is, and how it just keeps going. Like there's just no end to you know, that's a very deep well, and you start to sort of, you know, you almost want to. And it's interesting because it's one of those art forms that you can get extremely intellectual with and digest and break apart, but you can also just completely turn all that sort of shit off and just like, you want it, you know, like you hear what's going on and you almost want to try to imagine what solo you would play, or like imagine like where do you hear the notes going,
right?
And then how the soloist deviates from that expectation, becomes this source of constant surprise and magic and the artistry of it.
I can totally see that. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, all that being said, I don't particularly like this Birdland track. It's important. It has Wayne Shorter on it. Wayne Shorter coming back, you know, is probably the first track that I heard that was a bona fide fusion track. You know, jazz plus rock. And, you know, you have Jaco Pastorius on the bass, you know, and his playing is incredible. How he floats from supporting the rhythm and supporting the melody, and he'll just kind of like do one and the other and both at the same,
all at the same time. Yeah, right.
Which is very, like, very amazing to listen to. But I don't particularly like this track. It feels like an intro. It feels like the song never starts. It feels like just one big blue ball fucking intro. And I don't know. I can't tell you why.
I think I agree with that.
I think that there's something else interesting about this track, which is it sort of shows to me that, because it was done in the 70s, and I think it shows how like some of the rock bands were better at using the studio as an instrument than the jazz guys were, because there's layers. This is like maybe the only track on here that has like overdubs and shit.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can just like tell, like, y'all aren't as good at this yet. And it might be budget reasons. Like, you know, not as many people were buying Weather Report records as were buying Pink Floyd records, right? So they didn't have like months in the studio to do those perfect layers the exact right way and all that sort of shit to, you know, but it is...
What year was this?
I think it was like 77.
77, yeah. Okay, yeah.
You know, so... But it's...
That would have been around the time where a lot of that shit was being figured out and pioneered as well. Because, like, the Dark Side of the Moon was, like, one of the first, or at least one of the biggest albums early on to be recorded in, like, quadraphonic sound. And, like, whatever the fuck that meant.
Yeah,
at the time. like all sorts of different studio techniques were being pioneered then. So
Right.
it also kind of makes sense that if that wasn't a thing up to that point for jazz recordings, then maybe they weren't too focused on it.
Right. Well, I mean,
So,
and the Beatles were doing shit like that, like they were using the studio as an instrument,
Yeah.
but like jazz guys didn't fucking have to,
yeah, exactly.
so of course they were going to be behind the curve on that a little bit. But again, I might be totally, there's probably some people who'd be real mad at me about right now. And
I can see that being the case, whether it was or not.
So if you're mad about me saying that, then bless you for listening this far.
Jump in the comments. And...
Tell me about it, and I would love to be educated about it. All right. So yeah, I don't. This track is probably it's the only track on this playlist I don't particularly like, but I wanted to include it because it would have been an important anchor point for other things. So
Gotcha.
All right. So this next one,
Count Bubba.
Count Bubba. This has all of the quintessential big band, especially like a modern big band kind of songs. There's lots of hits and turns and stops and starts and all this sort of stuff. There's really nice melodies, and you have all these group unison figures in the horns and different horn sections and all that sort of stuff. There's like quote unquote like nice digestible solos. And there's a big chopping outro, so I wanted to include it because it's just such a good example of so many of these fucking charts I've had to play. This was, I think this was one of the ones we performed at TMEA. I don't think that this was one of the tryout pieces.
Okay.
Or it might have been. I don't know.
Because all you have here is TMEA All-State Band.
But yeah, it's kind of a cool track, So
yeah,
it's nice. It's nice. It's a good example of like just there's just so much going on, and it's such, I don't know, it's a unique flavor, and it honors, you can kind of connect it to the Jumpin' at the Woodside sort of thing. Like those are, like that to the Buddy Rich to that, they're all sort of part of that like big band. And there's a certain like bombastic thing that the big band is putting across.
Absolutely.
That's, that was something I didn't really get when I was doing it in college that I understood better now is, because they were like, well, play louder. I was like, you don't want me to...
You don't want me to play louder.
Like, you're not... It's like, I know you're not asking for what you want.
You do not know for what you ask.
But it again, it's sort of like, it's like, well, what the... It's like, so much of how I played was tied to my... especially early on as a drummer, was tied to my emotions, right? And it was like, this music doesn't make me want to hit hard. How can I possibly hit hard? So I tended to play that music when I was younger very timidly, because I was I wasn't very confident, with it. And, later on, I understand that, the most important role of the drummer is just to keep, it's like you got to keep that time, you got to keep the feel, you got to keep that momentum going and whatnot.
Yeah.
And playing big band stuff in college actually kind of fucked up my phrasing in a way, because you have to push as a drummer. You kind of have to push like because for whatever reason, like it's everyone else is going to have like kind of a tendency to drag, like they're going to want to like, because you're trying to you're trying to swing, like the horns are trying to swing all those figures. It's just very easy for you to go like, yeah, they're gonna want to hang back, so you got to play like, you got to just but not, it's hard to articulate that concept of like playing ahead of the beat, but anyway, it's
you just kind of know that you're always having to counteract this possible force.
Right. And it's a thing that I am now when I'm recording and doing studio stuff and I look at the grid and I'm like, God damn it, man. I'm always a little bit before the click track. I'm always a little bit before where I should be. I gotta stop that shit. God damn it. So but yeah. So yeah, it's a good track. And then the last three are really this is the crown jewel. This is all the other shit is fine.
Okay.
Right. But at the time, these last three, these are the songs that affected me emotionally at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Strange Fruit, for obvious reasons. If you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it. And kudos to everyone on every level that was involved in putting that song out, because it only would have taken one coward to be like, I don't know, I'm not sure. So because did I put a date on when that came out? Like fucking 30s or some shit?
1939.
Fuck.
Billie Holiday.
So yeah, had you heard that before?
I feel like I probably had. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not positive. Yeah, I'd heard of it for sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like Nina Simone did a cover of it, and lots of other people have done covers of it. But Billie Holiday's the OG.
Yeah.
So she also has another track, really, our other really famous track that was on that Ken Burns compilation called Solitude, which also affected me at the time because I was like, oh, this is like. And again, I feel so ignorant saying that shit now, but I was like, oh, these are like, what do you mean? Like jazz is like, what do you mean? It's like real songs. What do you mean it's like real songs? I didn't think real songs happened until,
like 1950 something. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, they sing lyrics that like relate to life and stuff before Elvis Presley and the Beatles? Are you serious? I feel so, you know what I mean? But it's just. What do you mean? I thought it was just like My Boyfriend's Back. I thought that was like the first song ever made about anything. So all right, and then we get to the fucking last two.
Yes.
And so how did these hit you?
I mean, Love Supreme, like the whole time was fucking great fucking track until you get to the lyrical part.
That fucked you up?
I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Really? Oh, man.
I was like, just stop doing that. Just stop. No, what are you doing?
It for me, it gets to that, and it just spirals into the stratosphere for me.
I thought it was like funny. I didn't think it was effective at doing anything. I was like, why are you doing this? Okay, that's kind of funny.
Oh, man. I
guess.
that is not how it makes me feel.
To be clear, it's just is it Coltrane doing it or is it somebody else fucking doing it?
I think it might be. I think it's him.
Is there some dude? The song's been playing for like fucking 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden someone starts going, "Love Supreme, Love Supreme."
He's not
Love
just
Supreme,
saying it though. It's
Supreme,
the bass line.
Love
It's
Supreme,
like
Love Supreme.
oh, there's
Supreme,
notes there, you asshole.
I don't think that there is.
You are wrong.
Okay, I'll believe you, but it sounded pretty fucking monotone to me.
No.
Okay.
You need to listen again.
Okay, maybe so.
You need to listen again. I'm trying to see like if they're gonna tell me who did the vocals on it.
Okay.
I can't find an easy answer here. So like there's like the dumbest fucking like Google question. I was like, "A Love Supreme vocals," and it was like, "Who sang A Love Supreme?" And it's like John Coltrane, the album.
Here are the general credits for the
yeah. It's like, God damn it.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. I'll listen to it again to see how that hits me again. Thinking about it, but it hit me fucking goofy.
That's okay.
So
that's okay. I am amazed that I like. Lots of people don't fucking like this record.
Really.
So to me, it's transcendent fucking perfection. It's hard for me to put into words, because this this was the first time that I had an emotional response to jazz music that was as intense as the emotional response I had to, metal music and all the other stuff I listened to. This was it. And so it's pretty sacred, hallowed music for me.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's hard for me to even describe it because and it's funny because it hits, I've talked about this before, but for whatever reason, this and that Emperor record, Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk, sit in similar spheres to me. And it's hard for me to explain why, but there is this sort of yearning to both of these. And there's also this sense, I don't think that if I hadn't spent the time listening to anthems over and over again when I was a teenager, trying to sort of decipher it and getting that sort of reward at the end, I don't think I would have had the patience to really go on this journey at all, but especially to sort of like accept and recognize the depth of Love Supreme.
Interesting.
So I'm probably the only wacko walking around that has a similar emotion with those two records.
Not many, I know that much.
But there's a sort of like spiritual yearning to me on both of those, and like, cause that's like the Coltrane thing is it's like, hey, I'm trying to talk to God. Keep up or don't, whatever. This horn is a implement, is a communication device as I am trying to communicate with that which is most high, and what's interesting to me, if you want to like look at it and kind of take it apart, is if you compare the way, so this is also the only track on here that has Elvin Jones on drums, which is probably like my favorite jazz drummer. And if you compare how he is just so wrapped up in what Coltrane is playing and so reactive to what he's doing, and you compare that to sort of how Jimmy Cobb was reacting to Coltrane on Kind of Blue. And because Jimmy Cobb is like, just do you, man. Just do you. I'll hold it down. Just do you. Right. And like Elvin is like, oh, I'll come with you. Right. I'll come with you. I got you. Okay, yeah, it's whatever. Yeah, man. Like a kind of a simultaneous parallel supportive fury is what Elvin is providing for Coltrane. It's just constant, just fucking kindling to that fire, just go. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so they have a very sort of like symbiotic sort of thing going on. And
awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful, transcendent shit. I can't say enough great things about it. It's super fucking important to me.
Cool. I think I understand that a little bit at least.
So, and it just so happened that I checked that. So I checked, I would go to the Baytown Library and check out fucking jazz CDs.
Right.
And so it just so happened that I checked out this CD and the next one, Roy Hargrove's Havana Creole. I don't know why I checked out that. I knew that because I'd already heard about Love Supreme, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that this track is even on the Ken Burns CD set. But for whatever reason in the context there, it just didn't mean a fucking thing to me. It didn't mean anything to me until I checked out the CD as a whole and listened to the whole album. For whatever reason, that is the first track. But so, But I'd heard about Coltrane, so I was like, oh, this is the one. This is the important one. Let me get this one. I don't know why I got the Roy Hargrove CD. I really don't. I might have had a sticker on it that said Grammy winner. On the back of it, it might have had the personnel listed and had Horacio Hernandez on drums, which I had recognized from Modern Drummer names and stuff. I don't know why, but
Right.
that
Something made you pick it up.
and this track here is, to me, it's 10 minutes of the most perfect music to ever exist.
It's good.
You're like, that's all right. That's all right.
With my heathen palate, I can say that it is good.
Yeah, I don't like. It's just 10. It's just 10 fucking minutes of just pure perfection to me.
Exactly what does it for you.
And the idea that it's just like, yeah, this is all. Well, we all play this at the same fucking time. We're just all in a room here, fucking, and just like you just get like that many fucking people all being perfect, all at the same time for 10 fucking minutes, and the way the things come in and out, the way what instrument is leading changes, and the way the like that like guitar hook that comes in that comes back later, and the first like 2 or 3 minutes, the percussion that you hear in the background, like that's everything I had like that was like a whole template for me. Like it was like, okay, well, this is everything I want to try to accomplish as a percussionist right here in these first like just few minutes. I'll just try to replicate this,
Damn.
Yeah. So how did this one hit you?
It was great. It was like I can't not divide up my opinions on any of these tracks between do I enjoy it and do I appreciate / like respect it. And they all fall into the second camp because they're all like amazing music.
Right. But you're like, I wouldn't listen to this.
Exactly. I mean, that's just, I don't know what it is about it that makes it fall that way, but it always kind of does. Whereas like, this is obviously all amazing shit.
Right.
The artistry on display here is like, I can't even fathom. There's no way I could get that.
Yeah.
I could follow it. Like, I couldn't slide myself into like you said earlier, like, I definitely do the thing where I imagine, like, while I'm listening to it, like, what would I do here? Like, what comes to my mind when I hear these things?
Right.
Where would I steer this?
Uh-huh.
And, like, I can't do that. That's not how my musical mind works.
Right.
So I could never get to... I have trouble appreciating it on that level, but I can appreciate the fact that they can do that. And, like, fucking, that's pretty incredible.
Right.
But... for some reason, it just doesn't hit me the same way where it's like, I want to be listening to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, and honestly, it's not a music that I go to often because it affects me so much.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So it's like, it's not...
the exact opposite reason.
Yeah. Like, I can't listen to...
Can't handle it.
I can't listen to this track often or fucking Love Supreme often because I can't do anything else.
I understand what you mean though, because I have songs like that for me too.
Yeah, like
So-
it's like, oh, this is what I'm fucking doing. I'm sitting here like
To sound like a huge fucking nerd, like some of the tracks from the last podcast, the video game shit, like one of those near tracks, like almost brings me to tears when I hear it.
sure.
So yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying there for sure.
Right. And I honestly, so I think that I seriously can't fucking believe that I discovered both of these records in the same fucking day.
Right from the Baytown Library of all places.
And I almost feel that that's the sole reason that I still will go digging in record shops to this day. Might just be I'm still chasing the dragon.
Right, for that off chance that something happens.
That I'm gonna find two things like this in the same fucking day. It's so fucking...
These days you're just hoping for one, much less two.
One out of every 10 visits.
Right.
Just every 10 visits, something that just makes you, whoa, And I got like two of these fucking life-changing fucking things. in one fucking day. But that, I mean, but that's
Man.
kind of like what being young is about too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that shit works.
I mean, statistically, over time, there will be fewer of those amazing things to discover.
Well, yeah. Well, and I mean, and it just you have to sort of wonder like the setting of like,
Oh, absolutely.
I fucking
Turns out context fucking matters.
yeah, of like, oh man, take the CD, take it home. I gotta wait till I get home because the CD player in my car is fucking broken, or whatever.
But also, like, what are you looking for? What's going to hit you a certain way? Where are you at in your life? Who are you at that time?
Right. And
too many different variables to
what was
for.
So important about both of those was it was the first time that I found an emotional anchor in this music.
Right.
Up to that point, it had mostly I was really just trying to be a good student.
Sure.
I didn't really get it. I have an emotional attachment to these things now because I have so much more knowledge and awareness, and I've been very lucky to know and meet actual jazz musicians now, and so that helped sort of really cleanse the palate on like, oh, okay, like it's not just a fucking old head gatekeeper music. So that really helped me sort of open my mind to a lot of things about it.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, like I enjoyed all of it.
So this is not what you're saying, but I'm reminded of it for some reason. So I remember when I was playing percussion in the unfortunately named Michael Band. It should have been called the Michael Flores Band, is what it should have been called. But whatever reason, they decided to go. That was the name before I joined. So, but I was playing percussion. We were playing at like a battle of bands in downtown or something like that. Jeremy was living downtown, or living in Houston. So
yeah.
He came to a show, and like he sat sort of close to the stage, and I just played my ass off. Like I just went for it, man. We all did. Like every time, I always ended up in bands where like that was like the thing. It's like every time, like from the fucking jump, you just went for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you played you just put as much of your soul as you could possibly put into every single performance. I always ended up in fucking bands where that was like, of course that's what you would do. Doesn't matter that we're playing for fucking 3 people for this bout. It doesn't matter. What else would you do? So I'd like play that way and then at the end of it, it's like, so I was like, it's like, oh, hey Jeremy, so what do you think or whatever. And this is like my musical brother, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he says, I really respect your ability to play shitty music authentically.
You could have just like kept it in the middle of the road, but you had to swerve off. You weren't gonna swerve this way. That was never an option, but you didn't have to swerve all the way this way. God damn.
Yeah, it's like,
boy.
Love you, Jeremy. Hope you're doing good in Norland, Norlandavia, wherever you're PhDing at these days. But yeah, and well, I guess what's so amusing about it is that he really meant that. That was the nicest thing he could muster. Like that was him. Like he really did mean that. It's like I
don't doubt that wasn't a genuine thing.
It's almost like a sort of like sincere, like this, like stumbling him into trying to. Well, I can't lie, but I have to say a positive thing. What is the positive thing?
I want to get my honest opinion across, but this is my best friend, and my, like,
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so it and there's also like this expectation of like, Richard, you know just as well as I do that this music is objectively bad. And I know that you know it.
Let's cut the crap.
Because
Let's be real.
you and I make music, we write songs together. I know that you know that this is objectively terrible. And yet I just saw you put your heart into it. And I think I respect that.
He's trying to like square these two things.
Yeah, he's having like he can't.
But
how can you?
Oh,
how
shit.
can you know? So
Oh wow.
yeah, it's a funny thing, and yeah, like my. But
hopefully me saying that I enjoy the playlist overall does not come off as I didn't use any harsh words in there at the very least.
it's funny. It reminded me of the Jeremy rhythm. Or like, do you remember like whatever the first time that like y'all came to see Eden, I think, and like Jeremy's little brother Jacob, who was in Buff Wayne with us. But he was like,
I
yeah.
remember this. Yes.
I forget exactly what he said.
I don't remember it either, but I remember your fucking reaction to it. And then he was terrified.
So then you tell it, because I'm not sure I remember exactly.
No, because I don't remember the exact words. I just remember the feeling.
Okay, so
is what I remember.
I this is vaguely what I remember. Please correct me or elaborate.
We just get Jacob in here and tell him.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he remembers. Because his life flashed before his eyes.
So, I had joined a band that was like more like a heavy version of Radiohead. So, but yeah, like a lot more.
Was it Eden at the time?
Yeah,
It was okay.
Yeah.
I feel like it was way earlier for some reason.
that band. We were a band for a long time.
Okay, fair.
And so Jacob, Jeremy's little brother, who was also in a metal band with me and you, so he's used to seeing me in like a certain framework, right?
Yeah.
And so he comes up to me like after the set, and I think what he said was like harsher than this, but what I remember was like, I didn't expect to see you in a band that, you know, like had melodies.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it probably was harsher than that.
And like, in the way that I heard it was like, I didn't expect you to see a band that like any band that was like good, was sort of how I heard it. Or like, I didn't expect to see you in a band that, you know,
like had actual talent.
Right. Like, I didn't think you cared about melody, Richard. Like some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like this whole aspect of music, like I'm just bereft of knowledge of it. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I think I responded with something to the effect of "fuck you," and
that was the energy. Absolutely, it was like, oh yeah, go fuck yourself. Turn around and walk away.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, you know, of course, a Barnes is gonna Barnes. Fuck off.
And then his reaction to that was very much like, oh no, I didn't.
He was very sweet. It was very sweet, because then he came up later and he was like
he didn't quite realize what it was that he had said to you or something.
Yeah, because he probably wasn't used to people calling him all that shit. And like but then he came up later and he was very sweet, and he was and it was, and again, it's very cute. It's very endearing, because it was like, oh, you're really not equipped linguistically to express nice things that you mean, are you? You just don't have that. What the fuck is wrong with you? And he said, but yeah, he was like, what I meant to say was, I didn't expect to see you in a band that didn't prioritize like heaviness and speed and intensity, because those are the things I'm just so used to seeing you do. And I was like, oh, well, okay, that makes, why didn't you fucking say that? That's a nice thing to say. I understand. Thank you. I get it. Why didn't you just say that? You know, and it's like, ah, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, bless those guys.
Yeah. Totally.
Alrighty, well that's it. We did a jazz.
Yeah.